Good evening and welcome to the October 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Glendale Sustainability Commission. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T UVerse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, iOS, and Android devices using a free app called Cablecast and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city webpage or website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. Call 818-548-4013 for program schedules. For public comments and questions during the meeting, call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when that agenda item is discussed. If you have any questions about matters on the agenda or requests for assistance, please contact the city clerk at 818-548-2090 during regular business hours. All right. Roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner Barchusov.
Here.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Vice Chair Kartunian.
Here.
Chairperson Bazemore.
Here.
Ex officio Sanchez.
Here.
Ex officio Ghazarian.
Here.
Item 1A, Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1B, Land Acknowledgement.
Yes, we would like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting in the city of Glendale in Tovagnar, the home and traditional lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people. We would like to pay our respects to the elders both past and present and the Gabrielino Tongva communities who continue to be stewards of this land. Glendale's history did not start with colonialism. Indigenous communities have lived in this area and been stewards of this land for hundreds of years and numerous generations. The Gabrielino Tongva communities and culture continues to grow and flourish. We encourage our audience to learn more about the Gabrielino Tongva tribe and the many indigenous communities in California and beyond. To get you started, you can find a list of books and resources at eglendalelac.org/Native American.
Item 1C, Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the October 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Sustainability Commission was posted September 27, 2024 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2, Approval of Minutes. 2A, Approval of the minutes of the Commission regular meeting held September 5, 2024.
Yeah, are there any comments on the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve?
So move. I had a couple of minor grammatical things, but not important enough, so it's fine.
You sure?
I second.
Okay. All right.
Roll call. Commissioner Barchusov.
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian.
Abstain.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
Yes.
Chairperson Bazemore.
Yes.
Oh, Commissioner Werner.
Yes.
3, board member staff comments.
Anyone want to start? Any comments?
I've got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a few images that I'd like to share with the public. We can start with the bike one. So I figured I'm going to start taking this opportunity as a commissioner to inform the public of resources that are available to our residents and our community, particularly financial resources as times are tough these days, rates are going up, folks are concerned about how to make ends meet. So one of the things that I wanted to share with the public is the e-bike rebate that the city started providing not long ago. This is a $300 e-bike rebate. So once you buy a bicycle, you submit an application for this $300 rebate that gets credited to your GWP account. If you're enrolled in the CARE program for low-income folks, you get an additional $100. So this is just one opportunity for folks to save some money if they're looking for ways to get around in their community other than driving, and need an extra push, an e-push, to let folks know that this is available to people. I just bought an e-bike a few months ago, and it's really unlocked my ability to get farther distances, and it's really become a game changer. So wanted to let folks know about that. And I think GWP, they do electric car. You get to come and test drive electric cars. They now incorporate scooters and e-bikes into that event as well, so you can come and try them all out. So I wanted to share that. And then, what was the other one that I had?
There's one about drive-through turf replacement.
Oh, the turf replacement, please. Another one that I wanted to share with the public is there is this turf replacement program, $3 a square foot. It's through Be Waterwise, and it's available to Glendale residents. I believe GWP has a partnership with this program. So if you're looking for ways to cut down on costs, minimize your climate footprint, and conserve water, this is one great way to, again, unlock that ability to make changes while also getting a sizable rebate. This can go into the thousands if you're looking at a conventional front yard or backyard. So it's not a small rebate. So I wanted to let folks know about that. And then if we can go on to the drive-through image. So I wanted to bring this up here at the commission. As you all know, I've been talking about this drive-through issue for quite some time. I know that the item as a prohibition on new drive-throughs went to council and did not pass. And so I want to kind of bring this issue to this commission and illustrate a specific concern that I have here in this community. This is a Starbucks right off of Central. And you would think that queuing is on their property, but it's actually in a public alleyway. So they're completely blocking the alleyway. The person who's working at this Starbucks is in the alleyway asking for people's orders. And while that's happening, there's an ongoing queue into the street and beyond. So I know there was discussion at council about what to do with this. There was even questions about why we're even looking at it. I think I want to formally ask that this item be agendized as an action item for us to either incorporate a recommendation into our climate adaptation action plan, or as a standalone recommendation to council to ask staff to develop some kind of standards to avoid this issue from ever happening in our communities. So that's my formal request, to have it be brought to the commission as a discussion item and ultimately an action item. So I guess, does that require a second, and what formal procedure needs to take place for that to happen?
I think I'll have to double check because we haven't done it for a while, but I think you need to have a second person endorse the request.
We'll be more than happy to second it. Another one that I see often is the in and out right off of Harvey. I don't know how they got the permit, but even snaking it around the parking lot, it causes traffic on the off-ramp, all over that neighborhood. Something needs to be done.
Thank
We
you.
have two people.
So just procedurally, does this, is it a matter of timing? Does the next time we hear it come as an action item, or what are next steps, and what do we expect as a commission?
Mr. Jones can address that procedural part of it.
So I think it would have to come as a standalone item because the measures and actions in the cap have already been solidified, and from that we're doing the greenhouse gas or the quantification and the secret analysis. I will reach back out to planning staff, as I have been previously, to ask them their advice on where they're going on this and work with them to bring a report back to council. I cannot give you the timing at this meeting, but I can work on that, and I'll email the chair of the commission between now and the next meeting to let you know what the timing would be when we can bring that back to this committee for deliberation.
Okay, great. And I think if it's a matter of planning staff, not if the timing for them doesn't work, or if they're unable to give us a formal presentation or briefing, I'd like for this commission to just move ahead within the next couple months. And I think, if I remember correctly, the GWP Commission did send a letter to council, like in their own direction. And perhaps if staff is willing to find that letter and share it just as like a reference, so that we are armed with, being aware with what other commissions have done. Maybe we can take the same position of crafting our own letter. I'd like to explore those options, but I don't want to be waiting around, as this has been an issue for a long time. So a couple months at the most is what I'm willing to wait for this. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Yes, I too had some rebates to announce. The Glendale Environmental Coalition brought it to my attention that there are some wonderful rebates from Glendale Water and Power. Apparently they have some excess funds because of the public benefit charge was supposed to have gone away and then it didn't. And so now there's all this extra money to allocate, which also means when the money's gone, it's gone. So people who want to take advantage of these should act right after November 7th when it kicks in. But some of the items include portable air conditioners. So for people that are low income, maybe they live in an older building that doesn't have central air or something, that's the type of thing that could really improve somebody's ability to withstand a heat wave. And rebates are right now $400 for some of these. And, they have to be Energy Star, and you have to look on the list, make sure it qualifies and all that. But that's a pretty substantial savings. And there's also things like ceiling fans, which could make a big difference too for surviving the heat. And then there's water heaters and refrigerators and things like that too. But the one that caught my eye really was the portable air conditioners, because it's something you can take with you when you move, even that sort of thing. So, act quickly. I just go on. It's not on the Glendale Water and Power site yet because it doesn't kick in until the 7th. But you can look at the Glendale Environmental Coalition's website, and everything you need to know would be on there. And also, there is a rain barrel distribution event that's coming up. Those aren't free, but you can pre-order and then you pick it up there, so you'd be saving a lot of shipping costs. That's Sunday, November 3rd from 12 to 2. And that's on the Environmental Coalition website as well. It's at the Foothill Municipal Water District. It's a partnership. But what is free is the Smart Gardening and Composting Workshop, where they are giving away compost bins and teaching people how to start their own sustainable compost garden. And that is coming up on Saturday, October 12th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And the rain barrel one was noon to 2, so on the 3rd of November. So hopefully folks can go to one or more of those events. And that's it for me.
I would like to introduce one of the comments that me and my fellow ex officio student commissioner have to make in regards to our new student sustainability project. What we hope to implement are our own different spins on specific kinds of events or promotions or different kinds of things we can offer to the city, whether that be for schools or for public and parks and recreational spaces. We are hoping to work with different parts of the cities and kind of sort of provide something for our city from our end. If you would like to also add on some of your specific ideas.
Yeah, some of these examples that we came up with were some cultural, environmentally friendly recipes, and also clothing swaps specifically targeted towards our demographics, so teenagers, such as prom dress clothing swaps, and also just other events that would help rally support, like bringing posters for these events to schools and methods on how to use environmentally safe practices around the house, and just going around to different schools in Glendale and sharing those presentations with them, hopefully.
Yeah, and so what I'd also like to add on is from our main ideas, we want to have it centered towards kids our age, providing different events for them. An additional idea we had was to provide almost somewhat farmers market events specifically towards school areas. For example, where Hoover High School, Toll Middle School, and Mark Keppel meets is a area where a lot of traction can come forth. And so to be able to combine multiple of those ideas and create one event that has the main ideas of providing sustainable and innovative practices and lifestyles, and introduce that to kids our age. So if you guys would like to provide any comments or additional feedback to what we have in mind as we develop and continue on that, we'd really appreciate it.
One quick comment, there's a book out there called Cooking with Scraps, because there's a big push to reduce food waste. Might be interesting if you get local chefs. It's using things like stems that you typically discard, and even banana peels. Might be interesting to have some demos with that.
Great, thank you. We'll look into that.
Yes, thank you.
I think that sounds great. It's awesome that you have a project figured out already. And I was going to just ask if there's anything of the commission that we can, do to help provide or support you with this. To your question, though, I think of giving feedback. I mean, it sounds like, again, a great idea, and I lost my train of thought there. I do have a question, though, I guess, is when are you kind of thinking around starting doing this?
Again, we're still developing the idea, so for the comment made about what the commission could provide, I believe we still need some time to really assess what we would need exactly in regards of the clothing swaps and things like that. Of course, we'd still ask for donations and other items, but I feel like considering our city provides a lot of clothing swaps, we can definitely have some of those supplies used, such as the clothing racks, etc. And additionally, about the timing, because it will take a few months to not just develop the ideas, but then reach out to companies, reach out to whatever we need to make sure we can actually host those events. We're thinking around springtime from March to May would be good, especially because Earth Day would be coming up, and the idea of sustainability and promoting that would be ideal. So that's what we have for now. Thank you guys for your support so far.
Quick comment, for the recipe exchange, if you are going to do a demo, cooking demo, my recommendation is to use the opportunity to demo clean induction cooktops. And that way, you're doing both at the same time. You're doing the recipe exchange, and you're demoing, new technology. For a lot of people that are used to cooking on gas stovetops, for them, induction cooktop is foreign, and they don't trust it. They don't know how it works. So it's an opportunity to do both. If I can be of any assistance on that, let me know.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, on the subject of rebates, incentives, and induction stovetops, I will mention that I know the state is going to be rolling out more incentives, really rebates for a lot of home electrification, including induction stovetops. That's going to be coming out this fall, so maybe by the time of our next commission meeting, there'll be a little more concrete information out there, but that's going to be for point of sale rebates, which is, it will be pretty significant. It's you know, something like in the magnitude of, I don't know, half $1 billion that the state has, or something like that. So I think just stay tuned for that. It's going to be, again, for stovetops, water heaters, AC units, you know, heat pumps, things like that. And then, yeah, Nora, if you don't mind, want to just give a little shout out for an event coming up this Saturday in recognition or in celebration of Clean Air Day, which we had yesterday. Walk by Glendale is going to be doing a around the city bike tour, highlighting some of the new improvements that have been put in over the last year or so. We're going to be kicking it off in Adams Square. I know there's some new kind of beautification, new creative sidewalks projects that were put in there. So we'll be admiring those, and then rolling out around 10 a.m. For a tour around the city. So this is kind of an adult ride. We're going to be, you know, asking that if you join, you know, please bring a helmet, of course. But we are asking that only ages 13 and up. If you want to register, there's a QR code here on the flyer, so please scan that. And we'd love to have you there. And Alec, maybe you want to speak briefly about the route that's being proposed?
Yeah, and before I do that, I'll mention the 9 to 10 is like a social hour. So if you're not comfortable or don't feel like riding that day, you're welcome to join at the mini park for social hour. The ride is going to be about 8 miles of a loop. So we'll start and end at the mini park in Adams Square. And we'll be traversing the city. So we'll be going as far north as North Brand, as far west as San Fernando Road, and using, you know, a combination of Chevy Chase and San Fernando to get to and fro. So I'd call it a moderate ride, but if you're new to riding, you may want to skip this one and join for the holiday ride, which is more family and beginner friendly, coming up in December. But for now, we're doing a little tour to showcase recent improvements in the city.
Well, coincidentally, in that same day in Adams Hill is the neighborhood-wide garage sale. There's over 60 homes that have signed up. It's a way of, finding new life for unwanted items. So encourage people to show up early with cash. My neighbors would appreciate it. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
It's Adams Hill Day, because I think that morning also Glendale Out is doing their coffee at the mini park as well that morning. So there's something for everybody at Adams Hill on Saturday. So hope to see you all there.
And
Okay.
then I'd also like to introduce Cole to come up and speak. He's our new Glendale Youth Alliance member for our office.
Hello, Office of Sustain. Oh, can you hear me? Great. Hello, Office of Sustainability. I'm Cole. It was already introduced to me a bit. Yeah, I'm the Glendale Youth Alliance worker who's been assigned to the Office of Sustainability. My main objectives for the next 3 months will be essentially outreach and communications, as well as administrative assistance. So working on the website, writing copy for the website and the newsletter, working on helping with event planning and that sort of thing. And yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from staff? No?
Sorry, I have one more quick thing, Cole. And to staff, oh, it's not you specifically, Cole, but welcome. I did notice again just the other day we have some bus stops along Brand that have really old marketing language about the city's plastic ban ordinance from 10 years ago. So hopefully we can work with it's been there for a really long time. So hopefully we can work with our transit folks to maybe refresh and put new marketing material at those bus stops, whether it's the gas leaf blower ban, or if we want to promote the e-bikes, for example, some kind of sustainability related message to replace what's been there for quite some time. So just wanted to point that out, and hopefully we can spread the word along the lines of outreach.
Quick question on that. Are those Glendale-owned bus stops? Okay.
Yeah, we just had a bus shelter item at City Council. So they acquire it, maybe a company maintains them, but we probably have rights over what's on the shelters themselves.
Okay, great. What's next?
Next is 6, reports and information. 6A, Southern California Association of Governments, Regional Sustainability. Ryan, are you there?
Sorry, before that, did we have, I think it was actually oral communications. Did we have anyone?
For oral communications, we do not have anyone on the line.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to make a point that we would like to move up item 6, including 6A, 6B, ahead of item 5A, for the purposes of addressing something that I think we're going to be talking about 5A. So, thank you.
Thank you. 6, reports information. 6A, Southern California Association of Governments, Regional Sustainability.
So, commissioners, you're interested, and understandably so, what's happening on a regional level. We had LARC come to the last meeting to present on the heat awareness campaign. And today we have Mr. Ryan Wolf from the Southern California Association of Governments. He's going to talk about some of their projects and everything, and understanding where the Sustainability Commission can maybe support or get involved. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Wolf to introduce himself and make his presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Thanks for the introduction. So, as I mentioned, Ryan Wolf, I manage the Sustainable and Resilient Development Department at SCAG. And if you're not really familiar with SCAG, just note that we are what is called the Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization for the SCAG region, which includes a very large geographic area and a very large population area. So Ventura, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange, and Imperial counties. And you can see it's a lot of local jurisdictions, a significant portion of the state's population, and very big economically. And as you all know who are from Southern California, just an extremely diverse geography. So what we really do is we do a variety of planning efforts at the regional level. We do the Sustainable Community Strategy, if you're familiar with that, which is linked to such objectives as SB 375, and really, planning for a multimodal region where there's, housing choice and economic vitality, and we're moving towards our regional and state climate goals. As we frequently find ourselves in the position where we're, bridging the gap between local climate action and sustainability efforts and state and federal. And so occupying this space, we really seek to provide a variety of benefits to local partners. And our overall vision is really, we want a better, more prosperous vision. And we're seeking to advance really regional solutions that are innovative in the terms of policy and funding and information sharing. So in terms of all the specific areas that we really work in from a regional support perspective, we provide lots of data and research. So if there's particular sustainability challenges at the regional level, related to energy, transportation, natural and agricultural lands, those types of things, we seek to do to bring information and best practices to local governments, especially where they might not have the in-house expertise or the time or capacity to do that background research and understand what's out there. We also do a lot of policy advocacy at the state and federal level, expressing where there's bills that can really advance regional sustainability planning. We get behind those. If there's fixes to programs as well that that are key for providing funding or policy fixes, that's something we do as well. And then we frequently bring together convenings of stakeholders from across the region to share best practices and information. Also, we do have technical assistance programs. So we have certain programs where we help pursue pursuit of funding for local governments at the regional level. Or provide the best policy opportunities as well. And then finally, on the funding support, and I'll get into this a little bit as well, we really kind of seek to lift up regional projects and programs. So, as you all know, you're working on climate action planning, it's really focused on what the city can do to reduce emissions, to adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change. And oftentimes, some of those solutions, while you can do a lot at the local level, you may need regional collaboration, or at least collaboration with your neighbors to actually advance key solutions. And so that's kind of the space where we seek to bring different actors together to identify what those solutions are. And so over the next several slides, I'll go through some of the different programs and resources we have to offer. I would note as well that at the end of this, I'm interested in learning a little bit what your needs are, because this is very high level information. And every jurisdiction has its own needs and goals, and it's helpful to know those as well to identify opportunities moving forward. But some examples of key tools and resources. So one of our core objectives is on transportation and zero emissions vehicles and supporting infrastructure like charging infrastructure are obviously really critical components of reducing emissions. And so we have a number of resources listed here where we've looked at barriers to technologies or penetration of certain types of EV or alternative fuel vehicles. The EV Atlas is essentially looking at readiness throughout the region for installing or expanding charging infrastructure. We are looking at truck infrastructure study for charging, so we can transition both port drayage trucks and long haul heavy duty trucks over into EVs and reduce diesel pollution. And then of course our other thing is we also want to really support mode shift away from single occupancy vehicles and driving towards active transportation, biking and walking, public transit, and other alternative modes that reduce the amount of driving we do, and therefore reduce emissions, but also increase access to jobs, key destinations, especially for communities that own fewer cars or can afford to drive, those types of things to open up access to opportunity. On the land use side, one of the key things is not just new modes, but obviously making sure that housing is growing in areas where it will support less driving and access to opportunities. And so we offer data tools where jurisdictions and the general public can look at key resources or characteristics of those areas to support infill development, putting housing in the right places. And then as well, we do have a focus on natural open space agricultural lands, and we are in the process of developing a open source platform that's open to the public, where you can overlay a variety of data layers. And one of the key uses for this is to support grant applications at the local level, understanding that there's these grant applications may ask for a variety of different data sources, and we'll have about 160 data layers on this, and you can look at, for example, socioeconomic and demographic information, like where disadvantaged communities reside, but you can also look at a variety of other things, such as where there's good tree canopy coverage, for example, versus poor tree canopy coverage, and to help to fill this information into grant applications. Finally, on the broader sustainability, we track throughout the region which jurisdictions are either pursuing or have established a variety of sustainability plans, ranging from climate action plans to other water resource plans, for example, and also kind of provide links to them so they're resources to effectively, as jurisdictions do their own climate planning, to kind of see what's going on out there in terms of best practices. Coupled with this, we do oftentimes convenings, trainings, and technical assistance. So one of the ways we do this is through Toolbox Tuesdays, where, for example, we will we'll bring together different jurisdictions, experts to provide policy guidance, to demonstrate the latest tools that can help jurisdictions and individual communities plan, build their knowledge set, be exposed to best practices. We do also do things like funding for active transportation and resilient streets. So Go Human is an example of this, and we provide grants to local jurisdictions that are doing anything from like what's pictured here, which is repurposing the street for things like outdoor dining, to bike lanes, education regarding active transportation safety, those types of things. And then the Clean Cities Coalition is a grouping of cities throughout Southern California, and it's kind of a national approach to help set priorities and ensure that there is an opportunity for regional collaboration to identify regional projects that can be advanced. So going into funding support and advocacy as well, this is one of the areas where we are increasingly focusing on, recognizing that there is always a need for more funding, and also recognizing that we're in a time where we have things like the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA, which have really laid out on the federal side a huge infusion of money, much of which is competitive. And we want to ensure as much of that money as possible lands in the coffers and in projects here in Southern California to advance climate planning and sustainability. And so we frequently will really track a lot of these different programs, their timelines, their eligibilities, those types of things. And then we work to coordinate with local and regional partners, especially to identify regional projects that cross over jurisdictional lines that can put us in a more competitive position to get that funding to the region. And so we'll oftentimes partner, and I'll discuss this momentarily, but the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which came out of the Inflation Reduction Act, is an example, and I'll get into how we kind of did that regional collaboration in a successful manner. And then we also receive a number of funding sources that are sub-allocated to us from the federal and state side of things. And then what we do is we establish either competitive or geographic proportional programs to fund directly planning, and in some cases, even more recently, infrastructure projects at the local level. And so some examples of these are regional early action planning grants, which the state provided to support housing and climate goals, which we've been sub-allocating. Also Sustainable Communities Program, which is really focused on active transportation and quick build projects. Last Mile Freight Program, which is focused on providing subsidies and incentives to the private sector to adopt charging for goods movement and also vehicle incentives. And then similarly, a federal program, the Carbon Reduction Program, which came out of the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA to essentially fund regional projects that reduce transportation emissions. So back to a specific example of something we've been working on recently is this Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. And so this is a federal grant. They began with a federal transportation planning grant, or a federal planning grant for all purposes. And each region that opted into it had to put forth what's called a Priority Climate Action Plan as a prerequisite to apply for about $4.5 billion in competitive funding. And so we worked with COGS throughout the region. We also worked with counties, South Coast Air Quality Management District, the ports, a variety of stakeholders to kind of come up with the most competitive application we could that would compete nationally. And the one we put forth in collaboration was a $500 million grant to support transitioning the sector over to electric duty, heavy duty, and medium duty vehicle trucks, also for charging as well, charging infrastructure. And then the other goals of this program were to create jobs, address environmental justice, and create workforce training. So this is an example of something we did where we really collaborate across agencies and try to make sure that we set our region up for really aggressive climate action and to attract as much fund as possible. I mentioned REAP earlier. It's Regional Early Action Planning Grants. These were established through the state budget, and has 3 goals: to accelerate infill development, so housing in transit-rich areas, transit-oriented areas. It includes not just location, but also affordability and choice, also written with objectives as well to reduce the amount of driving and to further fair housing in terms of reducing segregation and providing people more opportunities to get the housing they need where they need at an affordable level. And so what we've done with that is we've taken this funding, established a program, and we've solicited calls for projects throughout the region so that jurisdictions could put forth their best programs and projects that could be utilized for this funding. And this includes both planning to create like specific plans or update plans, and also infrastructure planning to do things like build backbone utility infrastructure so that you can put a housing in place. As well along this line, if you follow the recent budget discussions, that there was a lot, we had a lean budget year. And so one of the programs that was on the chopping block was this program, which is about $500 million statewide, with about half of that money coming to the SCAG region. It was going to be pared back substantially. And so we worked with local jurisdictions, including Glendale, to ensure that this funding was not cut, and we were actually successfully able to reverse this funding. And so in some cases, we work to make sure that funding cuts don't occur, but in other cases, we're seeking to lift up programs that need more funding in the region. And so, as you all are considering your own path and setting your own path for climate action, we are interested in understanding what comes out of that as far as priorities and ways in which we can continue to support funding and resources for all of you as well. So with that, I know it's very high level, interested in your comments and questions. And also, I want to make sure that we're getting good things out of this from you as well, so that we kind of understand what your priorities are. So if there are specific priority areas that you're looking at for your own climate action planning efforts, whether that be emissions or, adapting to climate change, we're interested in hearing that. And if there's specific projects and programs, we'd be interested in that as well. And then, obviously, if there's additional information where I can dive into more of these programs separately and give you more information, I'm happy to come back and send those back, either the information or have separate discussions with you all. So I'll stop there, and hopefully that was helpful, and happy to answer any additional questions.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Excellent presentation. Very, quite a lot that you guys are doing over there, and this I know is just kind of one portion of what SCAG works on. So I did want to do a quick call out to the Go Human program. I've worked on I've received one of those grants before and supported some of the work that I've done on the side with Walk by Glendale here in Glendale. So thank you for that. We had a good set of programs last summer with using that funding. So, well, I appreciate the discussion questions at the end, and I guess I would open it up to the commission to maybe respond to those or dive in. I don't know if we today are going to be able to specify all of the specific aspects of the climate plan, but certainly, David, I would think, in the sustainability office would be able to sort of dive in further and see how, there are areas within the plan that, may be able to kind of align or integrate in with some of the work that you're already doing. Yeah, I guess I'll turn it over to the group here. Any questions or comments?
I have one. Ryan, first of all, thank you for joining us. Familiar face. Question, I love SCAG's Money Monday emails, basically what's being offered by various state and federal agencies. But I'm going to be shameless and ask, is there something administered by SCAG that we should be applying for, or a city the size of Glendale would be a good candidate for that pot of money?
Yes, so I can send information on where to look at all of our funding programs. We have several ongoing, but we have our Sustainable Communities Program grants, which I have to look at the timeline, but I would always keep an eye out for those. Those are recurring. The Go Human stuff, tends to be recurring as well. Those are good. Those are good things. The Regional Early Action Planning Program grants that I mentioned earlier, those are pretty much out and have been awarded now, but we will be coming back, ideally, with more money soon. I'd mentioned the $500 million grant as well. We are collaborating with that, but there's two components to that. One is for your traditional goods movement infrastructure, like your trucks coming from the port or your long haul trucks, and incentives for those trucks and for the charging that would support them. But we also have a last mile freight program, which will get an infusion of 50 million for this. And so this would be targeted towards, it could be anything from your local grocery store delivery service, in terms of, taking the money to and from there, or the groceries to and from there. It could be, anything like your UPS type, last mile freight, those types of things. And the idea is to transition over from diesel and fossil fuel vehicles to electric, and those will be open to, primarily private sector, but there could be some public sector. We're still working with EPA and the guidelines for it, but those would be something I think would be relevant to you all as well. But I agree, the Money Monday stuff is really good. It provides a regular synopsis of, grant programs that are out there. There's just so much right now, and it's really hard to navigate. And so, as you all are looking through those grant programs, we are certainly happy if there are questions to answer them if we can, whether they're our own programs or not. And to the extent they're not our own programs, we are certainly happy to connect you with, whether it be a state agency or otherwise, to follow up on any information or questions you have.
Yeah, if you don't mind, feel free to send some of the links for the programs that you mentioned to Nora and David, and they can trickle it down to the right, department within the city, so that we can evaluate. Thank you in advance.
So Ryan, thank you again for the presentation. I don't think I worked with you directly, but I did work at SCAG for 3 years under Sarah Jepson with Julia Lippy-Klein on the Go Human program. So good to see you, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing at SCAG. Tell them I said hello. And yes, we do have an active Go Human quick build project in Glendale. That's the North Brand project. And I will tell you, if you don't know anything about it, we're learning a lot from the program. There's a lot of pros and cons to what's been constructed, and we as a community are learning all about it. It's the first ever parking protected bike lane in the city, and we're all just wrapping our minds around it and learning the good and the bad about it. So thanks for the presentation. I'm curious about, we don't know what we don't know, and SCAG is doing so much amazing stuff. You were talking about various... There was a slide you had showed on open space, indexing cities. I guess I'm curious, what do I want to ask? I'm curious, what are some best practices in the region that could inspire cities like Glendale to go above and beyond what we're doing? So, beyond cities simply having or aspiring to have a climate action plan, what are some best practices or some highlights, some spotlights that SCAG does of certain cities that are doing exceptional work that we can find something like that?
So from a plan perspective, there's this Green Region Initiative, which provides a synopsis of who's doing what in terms of types of plannings. In terms of projects, it really depends. Because as a region, right, it's just, there's so much going on. And so we typically, in all of our different projects, are looking for case studies to highlight them as best practices. And so, we almost always will have those in whatever study, whichever discipline. So if, for example, it's, EV charging you're interested in, or active transportation, those particular studies will almost always have profiles and best practices, and we tend to lift them up in our Toolbox Tuesdays. But it really is more study specific and discipline specific. So on natural lands and open space, for example, we have a number of ongoing efforts. We have the data oriented stuff like the Green Print, which provides basically collates 166 data layers that you otherwise would have to hunt for through various agency websites and those types of things. Like that's being developed. We're also launching studies on, natural lands and how the climate benefits of natural lands and agricultural lands, such as, how much sequestration potential is there, what types of co-benefits like groundwater recharge, hazard resilience and risk reduction from like wildfires and flooding and all those types of things. So I know that we don't have like a database, but if there are specific things that you're interested in, we can point you to them or we can bring them along. The other thing I will mention is that as part of that CPRG process, we are working with the steering committee of regional agencies on what's called the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. And that will look at what is a framework for reducing emissions from the LA, Orange County, bi-county region to align with state targets. But as part of that, we will also be putting out what's called a menu of measures. And so our consultant is looking at all the measures from all the caps across the region, and then basically pulling all this together, and then we'll be representing them as measure options. And those measures will include like how to set them up for equity prioritization. We'll also include probably some project profiles and those types of things. So that will be a good resource for climate action planning. And that will be, the draft of that will be out sometime in the spring. So that may line up as a good resource for you all as well.
Great. A couple of like specific examples. You mentioned EV chargers. I think it was EV chargers. You mentioned open space. Are those like, are you essentially ranking cities within the SCAG region to determine like who's doing well, who's not doing too well? Is it set up that way, or?
No, I would put it more like for the EV side. How about readiness would be a good example of like, what are good opportunities and where is there good readiness to put in place EV charging. So I don't think it's not like a report card, if that's what you're saying. It's more like what conditions are present to be able to advance things. On open space, it's really just making data that is spread out historically and may not be easy to access unless you are a policy expert, have really good GIS skills, those types of things. It's really about bringing it together and putting it in a usable, interactive format that would allow you just to say, I have a question about, what existing tree canopy coverage is in a particular city compared to the rest of the region, and I can pull that layer and I can look at it visually, and perhaps I can lay over, other layers that are important as well, like active transportation networks or something like that. And you can kind of see the intersectionality of, things like, is there enough urban tree canopy in places where we have like priority active transportation corridors, recognizing that, extreme heat is a deterrent to those things. And so perhaps you can see where there might be gaps that a city or a region can seek to fill in that point. And so those are the types of things that provides.
Awesome, cool. And then I have a lot to say, but I'll just leave with one more thing. I know you mentioned electrification of, the goods movement sector. I know a couple of years ago, congestion pricing was the heavy lift for SCAG to try to tackle that. What is like the one thing you personally are aware of that SCAG doing or are involved in that you're working on that, we as the city of Glendale can look forward to in terms of, the next innovation, the next breakthrough in sustainability that we should be keeping an eye out for?
That's a really good question. We're always focusing heavily on transportation, right? Because that's part of our mandate. So on the transportation side, I think, we always continue to look at how can the region grow in places where they have land use, will have access from a land use perspective to all the housing, access to services, access to schools, access to key destinations as possible. And where can we also seek to be careful and perhaps think about where we don't want to grow as much. And so we have a number of things where we have looked at in our plan, green region resource areas. So these are areas where perhaps there might be, hazards present. Perhaps there's wildfire exposure or flooding exposure, or there's, species that are more sensitive, those types of things. And so that land use perspective is like trying to provide resources so that jurisdictions can actually grow in the right place, in like a 15-minute community type aspect is very important. I think I think from a longer term perspective, for transportation in terms of not away from the mode shift, but towards what the fuels are, electric charging is going to be incredibly critical, right? And making sure it's where it's needed moving forward, it's reliable, and those types of things. So our EV focus, I think, will continue to be, a big component of it. And the EV Atlas and the Clean Technology Compendium and those types of things, I think, are really rich resources to understand in terms of like, what is the expected penetration of these things? How many chargers are needed? Where might they want to go in order to make it more accessible and equitable for people from that perspective? So I think those things are really key. And then I would say the last thing is, multi-benefit projects that are like nature-based solutions are stuff we're really looking at. So how can we add pervious surfaces and that, allow groundwater recharge, allow for tree canopy and stuff like that to impact extreme heat? That is something we're going towards, and we're also trying to identify what the best way to fund the green infrastructure is, not just to install it, but to maintain it moving forward. And so I personally, on that side, that's something I think is really critical because, as we know, extreme heat is no longer like a seasonal thing. It's actually sticking with us throughout much of the year. And the best time to plant a tree is yesterday, because 20 years from now, it'll be much hotter. And so we're really trying to identify ways to fund that stuff and to bring funding tools to cities.
Great. Awesome. Well, you've given me a lot of homework to do. I was just scanning the website and there's just so much information. So thank you very much, and good to see you.
Yep, same here. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Ryan. Excuse me. Thank you for the presentation. Just two questions, trying to narrow it down. When you're looking like at case studies, best management practices, one thing that strikes me, this commission, for example, I think it was last year, talked about pre-wiring of buildings for EV chargers and changes to building codes and things like that. Is that something that SCAG considers? Because it's not shovel ready, but you're facilitating.
Yeah. So I don't think we get down to that level as much, but there are some groups that are working on those types of things. So good group that's working on it is the U.S. Green Building Council right now, and their local chapter got a grant, I believe, from the state. It might have been an ICARP grant. And so essentially what they are doing is convening a series of forums is one aspect of it, where they're bringing together stakeholders to identify, what are the most innovative approaches to this, or what resources are there to consider this, model policies for cities to integrate into their, codes if they haven't done stuff like that. So they're a really great resource. But the actual wiring in buildings is something that's a little bit, I would say, more detailed than we get to. We typically are looking at like locationally where it needs to be to support the system, whereas they're looking at more the building specific stuff to make sure that the policies and incentives and conditions will be in place to ensure that happens.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And my next question, it probably again is to, it's really local level. I think the word is reconductoring. Is that the word for expanding the capacity of existing electrical infrastructure? Are there grants out there for that type of thing? Or for, muni utilities? I mean, we've got 4 muni utilities right here within, 10 miles. And I'm just wondering, because to me, that's a way to make a significant leap forward if you can start bringing more renewable energy in, regardless of where it's sourced from.
I mean, there are grants out here for a variety of things that relate to that. I know DOE has a bunch of stuff. They gave a presentation several months ago to our Energy and Environment Committee, where they went through probably, it must have been 30 or 40 different funding programs that they run at the federal level on this. So, and then I'd have to look state specific, there certainly are programs on there. I'm sure Hike knows quite a bit may even know more than me on this. So, but one of the REAP programs that we're working on is called Regional Utilities Supporting Housing. And one of the things that we're doing is funding both planning and infrastructure to ensure that the backbone infrastructure is there to support housing in the right areas. And so, as you may or may not be familiar with, oftentimes when, a housing development like a new apartment building comes in and it's, more dense than existing uses, there's oftentimes a required upgrading of materials of the infrastructure, including electricity. And sometimes those projects won't happen or pencil out because there needs to be so much upgrading of those. And oftentimes that falls on the developer itself. And so, it's recognizing that by incentivizing planning and sometimes investing directly in the infrastructure, we can make those projects become a reality and also add broader resilience to, not just electricity, but to stormwater infrastructure, water, those types of things. So we've been given some grants for those, and we have working with jurisdictions doing that. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the things where we want to go back and try to get a second round of this funding to continue to fund these types of things.
Okay. No, thank you. Very helpful. Just one other quick question. When you're talking about infill, for more housing development, is there a significant overlap with brownfields in that regard? Or I'm wondering how much infill, do you track how much infill is brownfields versus shovel-ready? In theory.
I'd have to check to see if we do track that. I'm not aware if we do. That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. I have to see if we do check that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you for participating virtually and saving some vehicle miles traveled there. But I am curious, so have you been to Glendale before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I've actually done a walk to school event there a couple times. So back several years ago when I was working more in the advocacy field, I would frequently go there and participate in events like that, and been up there for other reasons as well.
Okay, cool. So you have some context then. So I am also involved in homeowners groups here in Glendale too. So usually when we hear SCAG, it's usually in relation to the like RENA numbers and things like that. And we have a strong feeling that we're just not being given credit for all the development that we've been doing, historically before it was mandated even. So at this point, we're around 68% multifamily housing, which I'm sure the county is closer to 35 and the state is barely over 30%. So even though we have, roughly twice what the state has or more than twice what the country has in multifamily, we still feel like we're getting these other, additional numbers that's really straining our infrastructure. We all received notices that there might be, blackouts during the heat wave that we recently had. And I've lived in Glendale for actually 40 years this month, and I've just seen, a lot of density over that time, and just not a lot of amenities for the people that are being brought here. So we have there was a Blue Ribbon Commission about 20 years ago that looked at parks and open space and said that we're 800 acres short of parks and open space for a city our size. And they were urged strongly to start buying up land to do parks. They did not do that. And here we are, even bigger and with an even larger deficit of that. And I really feel like the children in the denser areas, mostly South Glendale, are really being failed by the system. They don't have access to parks and open space or even libraries to cool off during a heat wave. So it's a disparity that continues. And I don't know if you're aware, but South Glendale is even has a warmer temperature than other areas of Glendale. So the heat island effect is very real. And so every time we hear about more density, we think, buildings are the ones that create the heat island effect. So we just feel like that's getting even worse. And no one seems to be looking at that. So I live in South Glendale myself, in one of the few single-family neighborhoods in South Glendale. So, I'm reminded of it all the time. But And then also, we have because we have so many multifamily units, just trying to figure out how we can incentivize solar, like some of the others have mentioned too, but it seems difficult to do that. And I know it's more expensive to add EV stations when something's already built, but just, looking at creative ways to try to get landlords to come on board with all that. I was wondering if you had success with that in any other jurisdictions.
So in your first comment, just about housing density and considerations of park and open space and green space, just note that we hear this really frequently from a lot of different cities, especially in our policy committees. The emphasis on density from a statewide perspective, and then the intersection between that and climate resilience, whether that be extreme heat, but also access to open space and parks, those types of things. So it is an issue that comes up all the time. And that is one of the areas in which we're kind of, as a work area, kind of trying to expand to under the rubric of essentially recognizing that extreme heat is a major climate impact, but that there's green space has a lot of co-benefits as well, such as community activity, places to recreate, all of these things. So that is something we're focusing more and more about. And SCAG's emphasis on 15-minute communities includes, identifying strategies and funding that we can help bring resources to Glendale and other cities to effectively invest in that. And also best practices. There's more, if you go abroad, there's places where, majorly dense metro areas that have really effectively integrated green space into their urban fabric, even as they're extremely dense. And, places like Singapore come to mind here. The buildings, they actually provide policies and incentives to integrate, green roofs, green skyscrapers, to build according to the wind, to allow the wind through. That's a very hot environment there too as well. So we're seeing those things. And, when we look at our region, we're not seeing a lot of innovation yet in that area. And so this is an area in which we as an agency want to be able to bring these models and best practices forward, recognizing that, the state has its density emphasis, and we do have substantial lack of housing. We haven't been keeping with our housing. So it's a tough issue area, but I think recognizing that we want to bring resources so that as infill occurs, it's also improving recreation, park space, access to green space for a variety of reasons. On the second part, in regards to the buildings themselves and retrofitting them, that's a big equity issue, right? From a rental perspective, it means fewer people have access to them. Also, these old buildings, are harder to upgrade, as you said. Again, we don't specifically, that's not a specific area of ours because we don't focus as much on the nuts and bolts of housing in particular, but it's something that's, widely recognized as an issue. And I think we widely recognize as well that, if we don't effectively address the multifamily, electric vehicle charging and the overall resilience of the grid, then, we won't necessarily meet our regional goals for greenhouse gases either. And we won't bring the benefits of those technologies to others. So we're a partner in these issues, but on the last set of issues, but we don't specifically get into those policies of how to incentivize a particular building that's existing, for example, to do that.
Okay. I was thinking also with the increasing density too, another concern is fires. Some of our neighborhoods do back up to wildlife, urban interfaces and so on too. And infill development, obviously brings buildings closer together. And then as buildings are allowed to get taller through incentives, if they provide affordable units, for example, then normally you would put buildings farther apart when they're higher, by code. And so it just seems like the code is just sort of going out the window and we're just bringing buildings dangerously close, and those fire separation distances that they call them setbacks, but the reason we have setbacks is primarily for fire, privacy, noise. It's quality of life and safety issues, not just because somebody likes, having or some visual aesthetic thing or something like that. There's actual, public safety reasons that the powers that be came up with those setbacks back in the day as minimum standards, and then those minimum standards are pretty much conceded for the asking if there's so much as 5% of the units are for low income. So, and then the same lower standard applies to everybody in the building, not just the 5% of people that are getting the lower rate. The other 95% also has, no setbacks, parking shortages, less, whatever the waivers and concessions are for that particular project, but it could also include, less personal storage, smaller room sizes, things that basically affect your day-to-day life. And so I feel like a lot of these multifamily incentivized projects that are being, that have resulted from a lot of the lobbying that's going on in Sacramento have really downgraded the quality of life for people with lower income, and that's a equity issue in and of itself. And I think that people who live in multifamily housing deserve decent housing too, not just people in single-family homes. So that's something to keep in mind as they're looking for more ways to give handouts to builders, that there's somebody is paying the price for this, and it's primarily the residents of those buildings and the people who are stuck living near them. So just something to think about. So.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Thank you. I think these are things we hear very frequently.
And
so
maybe reaching out to more homeowners groups so you can hear that perspective might be useful. We've never had anyone from SCAG offer to speak at any of our meetings, so we just don't even know where some of these numbers and things come from, and maybe that could be helpful, just learning a little bit more about the issues on the ground, and instead of just making assumptions or listening to one or two people that say they represent the city, but who are more often than not in the real estate or development industry themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we keep track of these on a these issues on a regional level, and lend our resources to them. I think one of the things we have is that, like, we're partners with local jurisdictions, so ultimately we don't have land use authority for local jurisdictions, and so we try to bring resources and fill policy gaps and support local jurisdictions in their efforts. But I mean, I think clearly what you're talking about is also, what's going on at the state level versus going on at the local level, and how those policy priorities can sometimes not always be exactly in alignment with what everyone wants. So recognize that, and it's something we keep an eye on. It's complicated.
Yes, thank you, and appreciate you coming here virtually to share what you all do. I wasn't that aware that you had a lot to do with transportation and other things, so that was very useful to know, and I'm sure folks listening at home will be happy to hear about this too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks again, Ryan. I have a few questions, but I'm gonna hold off on them for now. But the one I did want to ask is, I think you spoke to this a little bit already, but it does sound like a lot of the information you provide is available online. There are opportunities, it sounds like, to reach out to individuals like yourself to have questions answered. But I'm curious, are there, do you facilitate like working groups or any kind of meetings of any sorts that members of our city, the sustainability office can be a part of, to kind of learn more about these in a more kind of active manner?
Yeah, we have a variety of working groups. We have, and I can send those over as a list for you as well, so you can see like when they're occurring and what their subject matter is. But we have some working groups focused on like open space and natural lands, like resilience. We have an equity working group. We have housing. I have to look up the list, but I'm happy to send you those so you can see. And those kind of working groups are very informal in the sense that people show up to them. We provide information. They're able to ask questions. Typically, also, if there's like issues that are desired for discussion, like we're open to, potentially bringing those forward, as as long as they fall within our kind of policy areas and what we do. And then also, I would just say, like, our regional policy committees are more formal, like a city council, but we do a lot of education of our elected officials there, and try to bring as much resources to them as possible on these different issues so that they can, perhaps turn around with these ideas and resources and go back and, work with their own cities to implement some of these best practices. So those are all opportunities. And then, depending on all of our individual like efforts, whether it's, doing an EV readiness study or, doing a study on open space, we always do engagement through those. And sometimes we'll establish advisory groups. We'll also typically, understanding that, there's nonprofits out there who are very community oriented, but may not have the funding, to participate regularly. We typically offer compensation so that people can have the time to apply and have their time compensated for expertise as well. So on those individual efforts, we always try to prioritize that, recognizing it's a way to, get more voices in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Appreciate having you here. And yeah, thanks again.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. What's next, Nora?
Next is 6B, Recreate Plastic Waste Reduction Outreach Report.
Chairperson Bazemore and the Sustainability Commission, as you know, the city has passed a number of ordinances regarding plastic waste reduction regulations, the polystyrene ordinance. In the past, as we've come to City Council with those ordinances, they've asked us to really do a lot more in-depth outreach into our community about what they think, especially the food and beverage providers who'd be affected by the ordinances. So Recreate had been working with Integrated Waste Management on SB 1383, reaching out to the food providers and everything that we had a presentation on a couple of meetings ago. And so since I had the connection with those types of businesses, we brought them on to ask them to do our outreach into these proposed plastic waste reduction regulations. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Allen from Recreate, who has been the primary project manager on this, and will give you a presentation on what they found and what they've heard and how that's influenced these proposed regulations.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, oh my goodness. Hi, yes, I am Rebecca Allen. I'm with Recreate Waste Collaborative, and I have been working with my colleagues, Natalie and Lainey, on this project. And I can just walk you through the presentation right now of how this outreach went. So, does this work? Is this? Sorry, thank you, Nora. Thank you so much. So I'm sure this is no new information to any of you here, but the purpose of this is to reduce plastic waste, litter, encourage reuse. You'll see from the common items found on California beaches. Also, no surprise, food containers and cutlery make up a very large amount of waste and litter items that are found really in all waterways and all litter, but specifically on California beaches. 86% of California voters support plastic reduction policies at local and state levels. The goals of this ordinance are to minimize the use of single-use packaging, especially non-recyclable or non-compostable items, to encourage reuse, develop all the regulations, getting feedback from members and stakeholders in the community, develop the regulations that can be applied effectively, and then support organizations once they are drafted to implement the regulations. So who are the stakeholders? Really, truly any food and beverage provider across the landscape of Glendale. You'll see there restaurants, cafes, cafeterias, food trucks, street vendors, anyone who's offering food and beverages to the public, as well as foodware vendors. So anyone who supplies food, packages food in-house, convenience stores, and then City of Glendale as well. So the first round of stakeholder engagement began in December of last year. We started outreach with over 139 businesses and 89 surveys conducted. The difference between the 139 businesses and the 89 is sometimes we would arrive and there wouldn't be a manager or owner. We wouldn't take a lot of time at that business because the person we were speaking to wasn't really in a decision-making position. But we did want to kind of get the temperature of what was going on at the restaurant or establishment. We just didn't conduct the survey because they really had no power to make any of these changes. But we did conduct 89 surveys in various neighborhoods around Glendale. In January, we wrote all of the information in a report and presented it to Glendale. And then in March, a second draft of the ordinance was drafted based on that outreach. So as you know, the polystyrene ban passed in November, and as we were doing outreach, we let people know about that if they were still unaware. And then we also surveyed them on what were the proposed regulations at the time. And at the time, in round one, the requirement was all reusable foodware would be used for dining on premises. All to-go, delivery, takeout would be all in compostable materials. All foodware accessories, utensils, straws, stirrers would have to be a fiber-based compostable. There'd be a 25-cent cup fee for all to-go beverages and compliance with California AB 1276, which is the accessories upon request law. The polystyrene ban was very self-explanatory. Everyone that we spoke to was very familiar with at least the expanded polystyrene. The trickier one are the red Solo cups, the rigid polystyrene. A lot of businesses, when we took a look at their products, were really shocked to know that a lot of soda cup lids, what I call the fancy plastics, like the very rigid clear plastics, are also a polystyrene number 6. And of course, that red Solo cup, that was a shocker to a lot of people too. We educated them on that ban. We also provided them with resources for implementation. We gave them information on Rethink Disposables, on California Green Business, how their business could get certified and get help. The QR code is a compliant product guide that we developed. And it is constantly changing. We're adding and taking away. You can business owners could scan it and get a whole list of products that were compliant under the ordinance. Additionally, we always give them our information. We try to lead them towards plastic-free restaurants, which will give grants for reusables before an ordinance passes, but not after an ordinance passes. Upstream, who has just a lot of great resources and case studies on reusables. And then Green Screen is kind of for those businesses who want to go the extra mile. They are a clearinghouse for when you choose to go with reusables, how to choose the most non-toxic reusables for implementation. And that was all provided to these businesses. So what did our feedback gather? After the 139 businesses and the 89 surveys, about 50% of businesses were supportive of the first version of the regulations. 20% of businesses have already implemented compostable and reusable foodware. But a big takeaway that we learned was that the majority of businesses have over 50% of their meals served as takeout or delivery. What we heard over and over from these restaurants was COVID is not over. The dine-in that was happening pre-COVID, they have never returned to the dine-in levels post-COVID. Visited a very nice restaurant in downtown Glendale. Beautiful dine-in experience. He told me 80% of the food he sells is to go or delivery. So we made note of all this, and in the new round, the updated policy still requires reusables for dine-in. Straws, utensils, stirrers must be fiber-based and compostable. But now for takeout and delivery, you can have compostable or recyclable foodware, and I can get into specifics of what that means as well. And they removed the 25-cent customer charge that was very unpopular when we visited businesses. So the second round of outreach started after the second draft of the ordinance. We began our second round of speaking with the same 89 businesses. We also held a vendor fair where I think I saw some of you at that vendor fair. And then of the 89 businesses, 77 were able to do an updated survey. A couple of the restaurants had since closed. Some were just not interested in speaking, or we could not get a hold of an appropriate manager or owner to speak with us. And we submitted our round 2 report to the city for consideration. So with these new requirements that we educated the business owners on, we let them know that fiber-based compostable was an option, but also recyclable materials, which are plastics 1, 2, and non-black 5, and aluminum. But the disposable straws, stirrers, and utensils would still have to be fiber-based compostable and upon request only. At our vendor fair, we had all the compliant products we could gather for vendors to come and take a look at. We also had Husky Cup, which is a great swap system. They don't have any locations in Glendale right now. They're really hoping to get more locations. They have a few in Burbank. Direct Pack, they're also known as the Bottle Box. They have a facility right here in San Fernando Valley where they turn bottles into thermoform clamshells, and they have compliant number 5s as well that are not black. And Sustainable Works and Recreate as well. We were there as well. So how did the support change from round 1 to round 2? Round 1 is in red and round 2 is in blue. And there was a definite increase in support from round 1 to round 2. We also asked businesses on the next slide what their confidence level was in implementing these changes, and there was a huge jump in confidence level now that the recyclable materials had been added as well. The primary barrier that these restaurants saw, or perceived primary barrier, is the cost of compostables and switching to compostables. Some were concerned about the cost of reusables, product availability. They still have some residual supply chain issues. And corporate, that little sliver right there is that these are franchises or businesses that simply cannot make the decision here in Glendale that comes from above, and then just a series of other ones in there as well. We asked if they would prefer that the implementation be phased and that straws, stirrers, and utensils start before all of the other areas, and that was an overwhelming yes. We asked them what they would most like the city to offer, and sourcing of ordinance-approved products was the #1 thing that they were hoping to get. Customer education, though, was a really close second. A lot of them expressed concern with, will customers know why we're making these changes? Will they blame us for making these changes? Also, a lot of concern with, because we talk about, SB 1383 a little with these businesses too, how they will have 3 separate bins, but then the customers just throw it all in one. So they would really, really appreciate some customer education as well. So the summary of the two rounds of outreach were that businesses were pleased with the addition of recyclable materials and the removal of the 25-cent cup fee. 22 out of the 77 businesses we visited were still using polystyrene. 30 have automatic dishwashers, but then a good deal are still washing by hand with the 3-sink sanitation system. 92% of restaurants are not offering their customers a 3-stream waste system. 14% more businesses were very supportive of the updated ordinance, and 19% more felt very confident in their ability to pull it off. They would like a purchasing guide for ordinance-approved products and customer education as their 2 #1 wishes from the city. There is also a waiver and exemption process should any of this cause undue hardship or an available product is not ready for them. Based on other work that we've done in other cities, we probably already could tell you the items that will need waivers. It's a hot coffee cup, certain things having to do with boba. These are all kind of ubiquitous things in every city that has passed these. City of Glendale also, as you might know, has sped up the permit process if they want an automatic dishwasher, and we did let them know that a lot of these companies are available as well with rental systems or service systems if they want to implement reusables. Here's my information. I'm pretty sure you have David Jones's information. If you have any further questions after this evening, we're always happy to chat and answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I think we did meet at the vendor
Yes.
fair, so it's good to see you again. All right. Well, that was a good summary. Really, interesting survey results that you had there. I am going to come back, so I'll let my colleagues go for it. Here.
Okay, just a couple, thank you, that was great, and I really was impressed with the turnaround as far as attitudes, acceptance of this before and after, with the second touch. Couple comments and questions. What's the conflict with health safety regs? I'm not aware of any conflicts. I think that was like a couple slides back.
Yes, it's perceived conflict.
Oh, perceived.
Yeah,
Okay.
and people, a lot of businesses didn't think they could accept customers' reusables, that they would get sued for doing this. It's the same thing we run into a lot with SB 1383, that they can't donate food when they can absolutely donate food.
Right.
Yeah.
So my follow-up to that is I go once a year to the LA County Health meetings. They have never done any outreach on AB 619, and when I ask why not, I never get an answer. So did you reference 619 when you were talking to these businesses?
We did, not in print or in paper. Oh, in other cities where we do similar outreach, 619 is part of the outreach, and we do have a flyer provided by the LA County Health Department that shows businesses how to successfully and appropriately use a customer's reusable in a way that is within the health guidelines.
Okay. I would highly recommend if the city can get that flyer to its businesses, because that is a perceived conflict. Again, they need to do better promotion on it, because everywhere I go, no one seems to know, a restaurant, a drive-through, no one seems to know about AB 619. I did the major plastics policy report for the city of LA about 3 years ago, and one thing I've completely changed my mind on, for community events, restaurants on site, we allowed both recyclable and compostable foodware. I think including recyclable was a huge mistake. And the reason I'm saying this, particularly at events, is because at events, you're going to get really dirty, number one, number two, and number five, plastic food containers. People are not going to stop, take the time to use your napkin and wipe those out. And I just last weekend with the Congress and neighborhood councils, where a lot of those people should have known better. I had been in attendance, but it still was it was heavy lift to get people to comply and wipe out those containers. Because if those containers go to a MRF dirty, they're not going to get recycled. So I hope to amend the ordinance that we have in LA based on that. I just want to go with compostables. I know they're more expensive, but you're likely to get more diversion with compostables because the foodware and with the food residue can go directly into the green bin. So that's my take on that. And I'm really sorry, I'm sure it was at council's urging about dropping the 25-cent fee, but that's such a strong disincentive to use disposables. And last thing, when we did the plastics on request, et cetera, in LA, the mailer we did to all the restaurants, one side of it was an advisory notice that the restaurants could post in their drive-through on their kiosk inside of their cash registers to educate the public. And I think they were widely used because, small restaurants don't have the time and I have the computer equipment to make those themselves. So we did that just to helpfully get the information out much more quickly. So I would hope Glendale would consider doing something like, or even little postcards. One thing too about the corporate policies, I've gone round and round with the city attorney on that. Like, does truly an out-of-state corporate owner, are they able to override a local regulation that bans or mandates certain things? I don't think so, but who knows what's in that agreement, the McDonald's franchise agreement, but I'm dubious on that. Thank you.
I agree, and I think that was more of their feeling that they're locked into a purchasing agreement as a franchise owner. It seems to be franchises, not corporations, I would say, if you dig deeper into the data. They are locked into purchasing agreements with say, a Subway, and Subway doesn't have any compliant materials.
Right. But I also wonder if they have contracts in those clauses that if something's not, I'm sure the contracts are executed based on, a list of what was compliant
Right.
foodware at the time, but that might be something to suggest to people too, that, to incorporate into future contracts, that if something that's not compliant with local regs is not available, because with most supply purchasing contracts, you're not obligated to make purchases. I don't know if these are exclusive contracts they're executing, but I would find that rather unusual. So typically, they shouldn't be bound to use that one supplier, but just a suggestion that if there's nothing that's compliant, then
Yeah.
contract's null and void, maybe.
Interesting.
Well, most contracts say something about like, that it's not, it can't violate the law. If there's anything that's against the law in this contract, that, that has to be taken into consideration. Our attorney could probably weigh in on that.
Sure, without more of the specifics, I would venture to say that it's probably the Commerce Clause that's one of the issues with the interstate regulation of trade of goods and services. And so the thought would be to approach those corporations on a national level, to have them have a policy. Maybe it's not applicable in all the states they do business in, but would provide some flexibility for states that desire to have, these alternatives implemented. Just a thought.
Oh, and I'd just add, AB 619 is the law that allows restaurants, food providers to let customers bring their own reusable foodware, in case people aren't familiar with that. But I mean, that's the best cost savings for everybody.
Absolutely. And regarding the 25-cent cup fee, I understand. I absolutely understand. But there have been some other pilot programs done where instead of the fee for a disposable cup is some sort of reward or bonus for bringing your own reusables. I met with a woman today who offers a free dessert if people bring their own to-go containers and things like that. So kind of incentivizing is also can be, and we also tell that to the business owners as well. Nothing's prohibiting you from incentivizing your customers. You will save money in the long run. Yeah.
Well, kind of like the grocery bag thing. Sometimes you get like Trader Joe's would give you a little ticket to be entered in a drawing or something like that, as they were trying to incentivize people to reuse those. So I was surprised that the graphic of the barriers to compliance didn't include like lack of space, because having space planned, a lot of commercial kitchens, they count for every square inch of space, and in the dining area also. And then you're looking at ADA turning radiuses and all these variables and traffic flow and so on. And so if someone comes up and says, oh, we need to have a third bin, it just like throws all that off. You've got all this like fixed furniture and everything, and all of a sudden, like, where are you going to put this that someone's not going to trip over it or not be able to get their wheelchair around it or what have you. So I was surprised that wasn't one of the considerations. And also with dishwashers, that would take up space that maybe they're using for storage or something like that too, that kitchens are already very tight, and also the labor of having someone wash dishes,
That did come up. That absolutely did. And it is included in that 8.2% right there. It wasn't one of the most significant things that people mentioned, but space constraints just to house reusables was something that came up too. If you're a really tiny coffee shop and you have to now have shelves of cups or plates, that's something that came up as well. Regarding the trash cans, it's going to be an interesting new dynamic when everything switches to reusable. There won't be all that much thrown away anymore when you're eating in a restaurant. For us, what we have seen as a best practice is just for the staff to separate it in the back of house. We've also let them know about case studies that show time after time that reusables will save them money in the long run and reduce their trash costs, possibly as well. So that's part of what the upstream solutions was, but we definitely heard about space constraints regarding reusables mostly, and then labor and water and energy costs regarding dishwashers. But again, included in those case studies, even when you take into account labor, energy, and water, you still will get a return on investment that just grows year after year.
Great. Well, thank you for helping close the knowledge gap. I do feel like I'm being given plasticware a little less often than I was before. I think it just takes a while. It's just people just have to, the information just has to soak in, I guess. And I've gotten better about asking them not to give it to me too. And so I think it's just forming a new habit, just like the reusable bag thing. I understand there's some law they're kind of looking at doing about changing the labeling for removing the best by date. Newsom is looking at that, like not using words like that cause people to want to throw something away that's might still have several weeks or months of life left in it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Absolutely, that's something we run into all the time when we do SB 1383 inspections. And SB 1383 does not account for best by, sell by, use by dates unless it is baby food or baby formula. Those you must discard after a best by date. But we do educate all of these business owners to know that that is not a hard and fast date. It has no health implications. If you go an hour past at midnight, it doesn't magically become spoiled. And that all of that food is donatable and must be donated. It's not considered okay to throw it away based on the expiration date. It must be included. And actually, interestingly, reminded me about the corporate laws usurping a local law. I know that with SB 1383, sometimes we'll meet with a chain who will say, well, corporate doesn't allow us to donate dairy. And we're saying, I'm so sorry about that, but this law requires you to donate the dairy. So I would assume it would be somewhat similar with the corporate contracts with.
And plus locally, I think that law's been on the books several years that you're not mandated to use by, best by, sell by. It's a voluntary system now. If you want to use different coding, it's not yet mandated to to have codes that the customer can't decipher. So you can do it voluntarily now, which I think they all should.
Yeah.
Rebecca, quick question. 16% of survey takers claim that product availability is a barrier. Is there an infographic or a list that we can put together to help them with that?
Absolutely.
Because as a small business, they usually source from Costco, Restaurant Depot, or Smart and Final.
Yes.
So what can we do? Should the city put together maybe a list of products that are available at these places, or?
That is a great question. I think understanding the nuance of how a restaurant gets its product is so important. A lot of times we just think that they're going to some online retailer or some vendor contract, but you are exactly right. They're going to Costco Business Center, and there's a handful of others. We began asking at some point and writing down where they went. There's a place called LAX, not the airport, where a lot of restaurants go, especially Asian restaurants that have very specific containers where they go to get their foodware supplies. I had a talk with with a manager at Costco, because Burbank's passed a similar ordinance, and we were discussing the ordinance in Burbank, and I said, all of these restaurants are chomping at the bit for you guys to carry the compliant products. Is that something you can do? And he said, absolutely not. That is a corporate decision where they have no purchasing or ordering ability at the store level. As far as what can the city do about that, that's a great question that I think we could dig into more, because that is absolutely something people want to be able to get their products locally that are compliant with the law.
Thanks.
But those corporations must have governmental affairs people. I mean, when we first looked at our food or accessories ordinance, we met with the governmental affairs people for McDonald's, et cetera, and they were all aware of this legislation coming down the pipeline. So I'm surprised that Costco or other large suppliers are not aware, but maybe that's some outreach the city could do, because you want your franchisees to be in compliance with the local regs. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't pivoted yet, especially with number of Costco's, et cetera, and Smart and Final that must be in California. Thanks.
Yeah. Agree.
I have two questions. Great
Yes.
presentation, by the way. You mentioned that a lot of businesses agreed that easing into certain parts of the ordinance would help their businesses greatly. Especially looking at the previous slide that was shown on the board about the cost of compostables, because it is such a big part of it. Would that be the next part of increasing the amount of changes that they would be required to fulfill, or is there something else that can be far more approachable for those businesses? What do you think is the best part to continue on with?
As far as the phasing,
Yes.
yes, it seemed to me that how we presented it to them was more, first it would be the accessories, so that all of that would have to transition first. Then you would have to do all of the actual foodware as recyclable, compostable, or reusable for dine-in. I guess if you were looking to put another step in, the reusables could be its own step in the process as well. I will say there were that small percentage of businesses were like, rip the Band-Aid off. We just want to do it. I just want to get it over with. And they were pretty passionate about that as well. But a lot of them did think that phasing it in any way, shape, or form would be easier for them.
All right, thank you. And then also I wanted to ask, I do believe you mentioned that in regards of customer education, that's something that's more specific to the city's responsibilities, but what do you think have been some of the best techniques you've seen used in regards of making sure the customers have more incentive to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question. Clear signage. I know some places have, it can be a little bit of signage insanity coming at you, but clear signage at appropriate places where the signage would be necessary. Providing businesses with the clear signage already with stickers on the back, so they just have to place it up, no barriers to implementation. Table tents as well, that while you're sitting waiting for your meal, maybe tell you why these are reusables now. We did find a kind of lack recently in people understanding why these laws were going into effect. They really are looking at the bottom line, and I think we are run in the same circles where we just know how bad polystyrene is for your body and the environment, but sometimes forget that the general public has no idea what a PFAS is or what the rates of these things ending up on beaches are. So I think any little bit of education that we can give via signs, table tents, social media, any outreach whatsoever. You were talking about the bus stops earlier, things like that. I think those are all viable.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks again for the presentation. I'm looking forward to this moving forward. I thought I saw a slide with where we were and where we're at, and Jennifer brought this up. Yes, this one exactly. The addition of the recyclables, did that come from council direction, or how did we go about to including recyclables in the proposed ordinance?
That was based on feedback from round one, correct? Yes. Yeah, every restaurant we talked to said we were operating on such thin margins. We were so affected by COVID. We have not recovered. We're barely getting by. Switching 100% to compostables some of them would absolutely just be brutal.
Okay, and
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious. Jennifer brought up the fact that dishware, utensils, etc. That stuff gets soiled by food, and so what's the practical effect of offering a recyclable item at a restaurant?
Well, the recyclable item would only be going home. It would only be for takeout. So along with educating the customer on how to take care of that once you're done eating it at your own home. At your home, you have the ability to rinse and recycle fairly easily. unlike at an event where it's very difficult. But this would no longer be ending up in the waste stream at the restaurant. So the consumer takes it home and then has the responsibility and the ability, honestly, at that point to rinse and recycle as well.
And let's dive in a little bit deeper into what is recyclable, because I've read enough articles to understand that the things that we thought were recyclable in the 90s, when recycling was the thing, is actually not recyclable. So are we defining the things that are acceptable as recyclable as the things that are actually recyclable in the city of Glendale?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because we have spent a lot of time on this.
Okay,
so
good.
it's all paying off right now. Yes, that is correct. Not only recyclable in the city of Glendale, you know, there's a hauler agreement here, so everyone is a little bit different. And everyone, some accept them, some recycle them, some find end markets, and some don't. We based it on that, along with the requirements of SB 54, which, if you're not familiar with SB 54, is setting recycling standards for all of these materials going forward. And they're still writing the regs, and the regs will be done early next year. But even if at this moment everything included in the ordinance isn't accepted and recycled by every single hauler in Glendale, as the SB 54 regs kick in, it will have to be. They will have to find an end market for it. And there's no clever wording in SB 54 about just accept it or haul it. It must be recycled. So at some point, one will catch up with the other, and you will only be using foodware in Glendale that does have an end market for recycling.
Okay, so and through your research and studies, the recyclable category of products available to a business is far more affordable than the compostable category of items. Can you explain, like, the...
Yeah.
I know there's so many products we're talking about, but is it double the price? Is it...
It's hard to say, because products are so different, and a big corporation that orders in bulk gets it for so much cheaper than a mom and pop. But for some of it, you are cutting the cost in half for some of these. I mean, polystyrene is the cheapest, but there's a reason it's the cheapest, and it's no longer part of the equation anyway. But if you are talking about like a #1 PET cup versus a compostable cup, I would say between 30 and 50%. Maybe difference. Got
it. Okay, so I went on the Recycle Coach app that we've all been encouraged to use here in Glendale. So I put in plastic cutlery, and it says it should go into the trash. So what you're saying is, through this state legislation, we will soon see this shift from trash to recycle if cleaned at the house?
Well, interesting. I think this is one of the reasons that the ordinance here says that all cutlery has to be fiber-based compostable, because it is very, very difficult to recycle utensils. So that would just end up, plastic utensils wouldn't even be part of the new ordinance here, because they are so difficult to recycle. SB 54 has what's called is it called the CMC list? It's covered materials categories, and they're basically just gathering data on a litany of different products and determining their compostability and recyclability. And this is all for packaging. I'm so sorry if I'm repeating something you already know, but this is all for packaging coming into stores. So you cannot sell a product in California under SB 54 if it does not meet a recyclability or compostability standard. So some of these products are just going to go away. Styrofoam's going to go away because it just doesn't hit the standard that California is demanding that it hits. So I would assume the same for plastic cutlery, but I'm not sure. They might come up with some miracle product. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And my last question is, you mentioned Burbank. Can you tell us a little bit about, if you know, what Burbank or Pasadena does? We love to know what our neighboring cities are doing so much. And I'm curious how they're taking the lead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it all works better. All your borders kind of bleed into one. I think that's wonderful. Pasadena, I do not have a lot of information on, but I do work with Burbank, and I am doing the outreach and education for their plastic waste reduction ordinance that passed earlier this year. It is almost exactly the same as this proposed one. So far, I visited about 95 businesses and kind of walked them through what the ordinance looks like and how to implement it. Burbank has a really long runway. You don't have to do reusables until January 1st of 2026. So for restaurants that are absolutely shocked by the information I am giving them, they take some breath knowing that they have a really long implementation time to get it up and running. We have seen a lot of corporations already making the shift. Kind of shocking. We just assumed Panda Express, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts all still had styrofoam, and they have moved on. Panda Express now has compostable clamshells. McDonald's has some compostable things as well. So I think the corporations are getting the message. It is just the mom and pops and small businesses that are going to need the extra attention and resources, I believe.
Cool. One quick question. Was King Taco one of the businesses you
No,
engaged?
it was not. Should it be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's what he's,
No, I haven't been there in a really long time, and that's because I know that they used styrofoam even for dine-in.
Yeah.
So again, I haven't been there in a long time, but I'm curious where they're at currently. I had another quick, what's our runway, or what are we proposing here in Glendale?
I'm not sure has it been defined?
I'll be talking about that when we go
okay.
through the.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a quick comment to answer your question about what's the practical impact of consumers start getting recyclable containers versus disposable. It'd probably be a wash, because I don't think most people will wash the recyclables and put them in the recycling bin. So I would say your trash volume won't change much at home for that. One thing, I was asked to look into cooperative purchasing for these types of products for LA, and our city attorney said we could facilitate but not assist. I don't know what the line is here, but you're right about Smart & Final and Costco. And I know Office Depot for years had a program where they treated their nonprofit customers as though they were a part of a larger buying group and gave them slightly discounted prices. So I wonder if it's possible for the city to approach the big buyer, big box stores here with foodware, just to say, would you consider doing this? Have an easy registration process, and maybe it doesn't have to be nonprofits. It could be for-profit businesses that are either categorized as small businesses or have annual income or revenues below a certain level. Because like you said, it is razor-thin margins, so even a couple cents here and there on different supplies would make a big difference. But I still always harken back to the 8619. That's the cheapest method for everybody. But thank you.
Thank you again. One of the questions I had at the beginning that I keep coming back to is, of the businesses in Glendale, what would you say, how many of them did you reach? I know you said 139 were what you attempted to target, but of the population of food, of restaurants in Glendale, how much of the city is that? What's the proportion?
The original list of businesses was over 800, I believe, over 800 food establishments, if I'm remembering correctly. And we actually went into about 220 of them. It was 139 we engaged with, and then 89 that we were able to actually conduct the full survey and really talk to these people. But I believe it's around 800 and something food and beverage establishments.
Got it. Okay. So this is 10% or so that you were able to get feedback from. Okay. And then that decreased slightly in your second round?
It did. We only wanted to kind of get an apples to apples comparison and not engage new people in this. Of the 89 that we went back to, 2 had closed and gone out of business. And then 7, we tried several attempts at both in-person and phone calls, couldn't get a manager and owner, or just a couple of them were like, we don't want to, we would rather not do a survey.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Lots of other questions have been asked. I'm trying to think what else I had. I might just leave it there. I guess sort of as a, what is the word I'm trying to find? Going forward, so is there going to be another survey that you conduct? I guess, what is the plan? I know we're going to be discussing an ordinance, but in terms of your work, will that be, is it kind of concluded potentially at this point until this ordinance is determined?
Yeah, you might be better to answer that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scope of work in the original contract after the second round of outreach is, yeah, it has come to an end. We're just waiting on final reports, which will be presented us tomorrow, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
So if it's a recommendation, as we do talk about the ordinance, that is another recommendation of the commission,
Yeah.
that further outreach should be done. We'll obviously take that under advisement and make those recommendations to
Okay.
the council.
Yeah, because I think it might be interesting to, I don't know if we can weigh in at all on potential future outreach, just to kind of devise maybe some other questions or think through kind of what you are asking these businesses. That might be an interesting exercise. Because I would, maybe it would be worthwhile to just go in and talk to someone myself in a restaurant and just hear what they have to say about this. But yeah, this was great. Thank you so much. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's next?
Next is 5 action items. 5A, plastic waste reduction regulation.
So Chairperson Bazemore and members of the Sustainability Commission. So we've heard a lot, and based on that, and based on City Council feedback, we have a couple of motions for the Sustainability Commission to consider about what this ordinance should look like. And for some reason, Siri is going off my phone. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the runways and everything, and then we want to get your feedback with how you think we should proceed as we eventually go to City Council with this. So next slide. So there is 2 motions in front of the Commission this evening. Motion 1 is recommending that the City Council direct staff to prepare an ordinance regulating the use of plastic stirrers, utensils and straws, and reusable foodware for on-premise dining and establishing disposable foodware recycling standards. And again, based on the feedback, there's another motion directing staff to develop incentive programs to support the transition to the proposed plastic waste reduction regulations ordinance. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go over this again because Rebecca talked about our past actions. So next slide. So in terms of the regulations development, again, the information that you heard today from Recreate was heavily involved, heavily influenced this. And as Rebecca talked about, the acceptability and recyclability of plastic and compostable items, again, was paramount in informing these regulations and City Council direction. And the question was asked, I think, what's Burbank doing in Burbank regulations? We're making the recommendation here that we do follow the same timelines and the same runways as Burbank does, just because a number of businesses operate in both jurisdictions, and if they're small, and they communicate with each other, it just seems to make business sense to follow that timeline that Burbank has put down. So we do recommend that. Next slide. Again, the reason we hired Recreate and everything is City Council really wanted to do a lot of outreach into the community before coming back to them with these proposed regulations. So the outreach, again, has informed what we're going to present to you today. Again, this is just going over what Rebecca talked about, the number of haulers who accept these different items. So we understand that not all haulers accept all items, but the majority of items are processed by a number of the haulers. So that's why we recommend the use of non-black plastics 1, 2, and 5, and compostable items as part of this ordinance. So next slide, please. And next slide. So right, here we come to the meat. So what we are what we're recommending is that starting effective July 1, 2025, there is a prohibition on the use, distribution, and sale of single-use plastic straws, stirrers, and utensils, and that those items have to be made of non-plastic materials such as paper, pasta, sugarcane, bamboo, or wood, because we know those items are not recycled anyway at all, and hopefully it's an easy lift for the food and beverage providers to replace those items from plastic items. So that's our first key recommendation. And obviously there'll be an accommodation for people with disabilities that may require plastic straws or whatever. So that's our first recommendation of that section of the ordinance. Next, please. The second recommendation is following the Burbank timeline that effective January 1, 2026, no food or beverage facility may distribute disposable foodware that is not compostable or recyclable within our systems. So as Rebecca was talking about, there's plastics 1, 2, and 5, and we can recommend using those, and also the compostable items. When we talk about compostable items, it's like non-lined, not plastic, number 7 PLA, those will be completely banned. So next slide, please. Again, we recommend following the Burbank timeline that effective January 1, 2026, prepared food and beverage providers, prepared food or beverage served for consumption and by a customer on the premises of food and beverage facilities shall be only distributed in reusable foodware. So that is moving away completely from offering plastic, single-use plastics when you sit down and dine in service dining, that reusable foodware be used. Sorry, just go back one point.
Yeah.
Nothing in this section will prohibit food and beverage facilities from providing doggy bag to prevent food waste, so people can take the stuff home with them. And then Rebecca mentioned that they got a lot of feedback and discussions with McDonald's of the world to be able to permit the use of the compostable recycled single-use liners when necessary to serve as a barrier between the food. So that's a recommendation of theirs too. So the purpose of the ordinance is to try and really move away from single-use plastics, really encourage reusable for on-premises dining, and then when people do get stuff to take away, it is in those 3 plastics that are supposed to be recyclable, and then the compostable items too. Next. Recognizing what Rebecca said about the assistance businesses want, if we're going to implement and develop these ordinances, we recommend that we made the recommendation that staff go away and develop a couple of incentive programs. There's been no allocation of funding for these incentive programs, so we'd ask to make that recommendation to City Council that they provide the funding for these incentive programs. So the first incentive program we focused on helping restaurants and food and beverage providers get the compliant products. So, to be able to buy the disposable foodware that meets the foodware recycling standards. And then the second part would be maybe to focus the program on providing financial assistance to help dine-in restaurants and cafes buy reusable foodware. Talking to other jurisdictions that have had similar incentive programs, their recommendation was at least 80% of this allocation go to assisting food and beverage providers to buy items for reusable dining, and not so much getting them to buy alternative plastics to meet the foodware recycling standards. So we recommend an allocation of $50,000 over 2 years to help restaurants transition to compliant products. Next slide, please. The second incentive program, and again from the feedback received from Rebecca and Recreate, is a capital improvement program in essence. Again, so this will be directed primarily to small food and beverage providers, so 26 employees or under. And not chains, so you can have 26 employees and then they'll be part of a franchisor chain that you wouldn't be qualified as small business. So the first part of this program may be to assist with any capital improvements to be able to accommodate dishwashers, as plumbing required, as like Commissioner Werner said, is the space and everything to be able to put the dishwashers in. So to help them set up and actually install these dishwashers. And then the potential, the second part of this program would be a dishwasher rebate program. The customers can get instant rebates and qualifying energy efficient dishwashers for their businesses. And this program may provide up to $750 to help them comply with this new ordinance. Again, we recommend an allocation of $100,000 over 2 years to develop this incentive program. There is a number of other incentive programs out there, like SoCal Gas. They will provide up to $750 for to install dishwashers and everything. So we are looking at those incentive programs and also other grant programs that may be available. So, yeah. So with that, we're open to questions. We're open to recommendations. If you want to make any amendments to the motions, based on what you've heard from Rebecca and based on your experience and what you'd like to see with this potential ordinance, plastic waste reduction regulations. So.
Well, I'm wondering for the commission if we want to just take these slide by slide, unless there's just like some short feedback that we all want to give at the beginning.
I have a quick question. You're saying January 1, 2025, 2026, sorry, if they eat in-house, they have to have the, glass or whatever, reusable.
Mm-hmm.
But if they take it to go, it has to be in recyclable or compostable products. And we know that some of the recyclable products are not being recycled.
Correct.
Whether it's, because the consumer doesn't know, or it's convenient to just throw it in the trash, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Should we put another sunset 6 months, 1 year after the January 1, 2026, where only compostable products will be allowed? Because we know that it's similar to the nylon trash bags, that were banned. People found the easy path and they found a way around it. I'm just afraid that they're going to be switching to the recyclable and not necessarily the compostable product. And most of it is going to end up in landfills, for one reason or another.
Sure.
Could we, add another 6 months later or a year later, another sunset that says, for this duration, you can still use recyclable, but after that, even that's going to go away. That would be my recommendation.
Commissioner Cartulli, absolutely, we could do that. The reason we didn't propose that in these regulations, because when we took this item to council, there was great concern over the costs to small businesses about complying with these regulations. So maybe there is a scenario there where if you're a smaller business, that sunset doesn't set in until maybe 3 or 4 years after regulations. But if you're a larger business, maybe that sunset does set in earlier. Our focus has very much been, we know these regulations aren't perfect, just because of what can be recycled and everything. Our objective of these regulations is to make them as implementable as possible and to make them appealing as possible to the food and beverage providers, so we don't have situations where they're just not doing it and they can't do it. So we try to make it as palatable as possible. And that's been our focus and our decision making behind this. But absolutely, I think making that sunset recommendation is a great recommendation to make.
I think, you make a good point, giving the small businesses, the ones that are going to be hardest to, implement, if we give them longer runway, it would help them, because the word will be out, that, my neighbor next door, they had to comply now, and eventually I have to. Sure, but I think doing it now in advance and not waiting for yet another commission in the future reviewing it and maybe doing it, and by all means, if future commissions want to speed it up and add more requirements, they can. But my suggestion is for us to add that restriction today and say January 1, 2026, compostable, recyclable. January 1, 2027 for large businesses, and a year after that for all businesses. I think that provides enough runway for everybody, and those that are concerned would read it and say, okay, I got 1 year, I got 2 years, I gotta phase this out. But my recommendation is to add that today and not wait for a future commission or future council.
I would absolutely support that, and I think if we can align it in any way with SB 54, I'm not sure if there's anything in that bill that would be dictating kind of future determinations around these plastic waste reductions or not.
A lot of the plastic containers will go away if they don't meet certain recycling rates, so.
Right.
Yeah.
One question, David, is how do we determine what's considered on premises? Because I'm imagining a scenario now where we put this in place, and instead of going into In-N-Out and them asking if you want it for here to go, they just give it to you in a bag with whatever, you know. I guess at In-N-Out it's all wrapped up in paper, but somewhere they just put it in a clamshell for you and they don't even ask. And then, you know, yes, maybe you can go and sit down on their table, but they didn't ask if you're going to eat there or leave. I mean, how is that determined? Or is there any way we could sort of kind of get ahead of that possibility through this ordinance?
So I think I recommend, just bear with me 1 sec.
The restaurants that were, during COVID, that were allowed to have al fresco dining are those considered in-house dining? Okay. They're not gonna say it's right outside my door, it's not in-house.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. It's like my
Outside the
favorite
house.
burrito place, El Tapatio, has a few tables outside. It's like, you know, they don't have a dining room, but, okay.
So I
that's
think
good.
the intent was, if you go into a restaurant and you sit down and you're served, that's what it would apply to.
Okay, so table service, not quick service kind of
Correct.
thing? Like, so if you order at the counter and then sit down, it's different?
Oh, so
Could that-
only
That's
full
our
service
recommendation.
where the order is
Right.
taken. Oh, see, in LA, I proposed if you eat in on the premises,
Okay.
all reusable. So that's the big divide. The county has done it only if it's full service where your order's taken where you sit. I don't know what LA's going to end up with, but the proposal was any dine-in meal, regardless of the type of, you know, fast food or full-service restaurant.
Right, so we're going
that
to
is a
follow the
big divide.
county's lead. It's our recommendation. Again,
Which is, again, sorry to reiterate, it's full service.
Full service, yeah.
So you sit down, you're seated at a table, you order your food, that should be coming on a reusable. Kind of wild to imagine that wouldn't already, but
right, so, and I think a reason for that is, and this is where, again, there's nuance. If you go to a food hall like the Galleria, right, and you go to one of those, they have no space for dishwashers at all. The spaces are so tight and so constrained, and that was definitely something feedback we got. So that's why we I think it was like the sit down, you have to be served. That's where that demarcation point. But again, if that's not the recommendation of this commission, if you want us to expand that to be more inclusive, we can make those recommendations to city
And one
council.
thing, too, we have to consider is building the infrastructure, changing building codes, because a mall should have a dishwashing room, should have space for a refrigerator for leftovers. So that's something that, things like this aren't standalone. We have to build the underlying infrastructure, too.
And I know in certain circumstances they did have those facilities, but those facilities were taken away due to taking up non-income generating space.
They don't generate revenue,
Right,
so they're
correct.
very disliked.
Correct.
do we have a sense of how many restaurants, like what proportion of the restaurants in Glendale are full service as opposed to quick service?
I do not know that. I do not know that offhand.
Okay, okay.
The information we have in all the restaurants, the way we identified all the restaurants and what we have sent mailers to restaurants prior to, like Commissioner Pinkerton was talking about with LA with the disposable food accessories, sent them a flyer that they can post. So we did do that as well. So we got all that information from the LA County of Department of Health, who are the primary inspectors food and beverage establishments. So we felt that was probably the most up-to-date and comprehensive list. So that's what we, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It would be helpful, though, if we collect more information through whatever business permit process we have. That's one thing I say to LA all the time. It's like, here's the name of a company, John Smith LLC. Well, he owns 10 McDonald's franchises, but I cannot tell that by his name. And the business type, there's not enough information in there to support government activities in areas like this. So I think it would be helpful if we could expand that and get a lot of information, because you really should know who's doing business and what type of business is going on in the city.
I was also a little disappointed to see how few trash collectors can actually accept these materials, including the city of Glendale. I'm like, we're asking them to do all this and we can't even accept these things. So it just seems a little cart before the horse to me. Like, we're still trying to wrap our heads around what's compostable and what isn't. And then here we are telling people to just comply with it. And then, and we don't pick those up. And I think they need to, I don't know when these contracts expire with these different ones. It looks like Athens and NASA, Southland, the ones that some of them accepted most, some of them didn't. Athens, Southland, and NASA accept and recycle most of those, but the other ones, ourselves and this WRT accepted the least. It seems like that needs
I
to
think
be.
Rebecca would like to add some light.
Yeah.
Shed some light.
Sorry.
Rebecca, sorry, before you do,
yeah.
Nora, can you put up the slide with those breakdowns? Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Yes, I can address this really quickly. I just want to say too about the for here or to go. A big question we get a lot is, well, what if someone says it's to go, but then they sit down in my restaurant and eat it? The basic stance other cities have had is you can't control what your customers do if they're going to lie to you. But the other one is every restaurant should be asking for here to go because there are tax implications to that. So part of the training we do in other cities is we have a training manual for all staff taking orders that they do always have to say, is this for here or to go? They already should be doing that because of the tax implications. So it would require them to ask and get an answer instead of just putting it in something and handing it to a customer. Yes, we've had several cart before horse and horse after cart discussions regarding this. What goes first? At some point it is all going to line up. At some point there will be a cart and a horse all going to the same location. But as the regulations are being written and this is rolling out, again, kind of the indication was why not get everybody at least knowing what is commonly recyclable. At least 3 out of 5 of some of these are taking them. And as SB 54, there are many target dates on SB 54. They start in 2026. As that starts, if they're starting in 2026, then it could line up with the ordinance and they would be getting on the same page at the same time. I think a lot of this, a lot of the language that we came across as you are talking about this was haulers that say we accept plastics 1 through 7, we haul plastics 1 through 7, and then we had to really go directly to the MRF and figure out what is actually getting recycled there. And this was the data that we got directly from the material recovery facilities. But again, yes, I know right now it would be great to know that you're telling customers to use something that has a reliable end market, but starting in 2026, it hopefully will, these numbers should improve.
And then a rationale for the longer runway too. And it's confusing, right? And we understand we're asking people to do something which may not necessarily be practical right now, but again, how long do we wait? How long do we wait? How long do we wait? So do we start on the process now or not?
Are there plans that we have to standardize the materials accepted by the franchisees at some point in the future?
I would have to ask Integrated Waste Management and get back to you with that response.
Okay. One quick suggestion, if you wouldn't mind adding slide numbers in the future, it'll just be easier to find out which one. And then also, if you could add the resin codes when you've got like polypropylene and there was one slide I didn't understand. I think it was the second one with the yellow triangle about the liners being barriers. I didn't quite catch that. Oh, yeah, that one back. Compostable recycling, single-use liners. Oh, okay, okay. I probably wouldn't call it a liner, I'd probably call it a wrapper. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, again, because we've referenced so many of these other cities that have implemented these kinds of ordinances and kind of what are best practices, common issues that you have. They call it, one is a tray liner that they really think is more sanitary. There's a lot of post-COVID, what is sanitary, what is not sanitary. So it is a liner or like a fry liner in a basket to collect grease. But then a lot of ordinances in other cities will describe it as a wrapper, made of the same material, but a wrapper that maintains the integrity of the shape of the product. So that would be a burger, a sandwich, a sub, a burrito, something where in order to maintain that shape, it requires some sort of wrapper.
Toothpicks might serve the same function and have a lot less material and compostable if they don't put those silly little plastic crowns on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question, and this might be a Rebecca question, I'm not sure. So it was hard to tell in the report, like who drafted what. It was just all kind of put together in a report, and I saw that Recreate Waste Collaborative is mentioned on some of these pages, so that might be yours. But I write specifications for a living, so I can't help myself. But okay, so there's one where it said a TSM instead of ASTM, and the pages aren't numbered, another big peeve of mine. So I can't even describe what page it is, but the paragraph starts off SB 54 implications relevant to the PWRR. So the third paragraph is where it says ATSM. And then also on the following page, where there's the SB 54 yearly timeline, and then the next paragraph right under that where it says recycling. There's one, it says collected by recycling problems, serving 60%. I think they mean collected by recycling programs, serving 60% of the state's population. And then the following paragraph, where there's a bullet point that says the composting must meet ASTM standards. It should always say what ASTM standard. There's tens of thousands of ASTM standards and 4 or 5 that have to do with composting. So, if it's ASTM D 6400 and ASTM D 5338, then it should say that, or is it one or the other, or is it both, or that kind of thing. But I would just in general never say needs to meet ASTM standards. Is that the ASTM standard for the tensile strength of the plastics? I mean, it just leaves this loophole that someone can say, well, it meets ASTM, E84 or something, or whatever, which might mean it's even less compostable or something. So that's just something I would throw out there. I don't know whose content that is.
So just in reference to that, so this was just an internal memorandum provided to staff from Recreate, and we put it into the package just so you could reference it. So it's not a technical document like you were suggesting, and I think if we had asked them to provide that technical document, they would have done so, and they would have referenced all their standards, but it was just to give a little bit more of the background on the conversations with the haulers, so that, again, fed into but I understand.
Ordinance things attached to it, so it looked like the packet that would go to City Council, and so it's going to be this legal thing, part of the backup for a legal thing. So I'm just throwing that out there, but a little bit of polishing there. And then I know some of these compostable standards have been withdrawn, and this and that. So I think there's just been a lot of even the standards testing communities still trying to figure out what's compostable or recyclable and what isn't, and just sifting through that. And is anyone looking at the footprint to compost something, and is that carbon footprint higher than if it just went into the trash. Because I mean, you start looking at some of these like aerobic digester things, and someone's got to take it there, and then it goes through something for I don't know how many months or weeks or whatever, and then it has to go somewhere else, get buried in Bakersfield or something. So literally, so what is, has anyone measured that, and are we actually creating a problem that's worse than the problem that we're trying to solve?
Well, I mean, SB 1383 demands the organics diversion, so I know they looked at all sorts of things, but that is controlling, that we need more compostables. We want it, because you want to at least have them processed versus going into the landfill, so.
And I think with the standards, a kind of way to usurp any weirdness around any of that changing is just to accept a certified product, like a BPI or CMA certified, then it would already meet compostable standards, and then that's a kind of, everybody else, BPI did the work for you, or as well. And yes, it would, I'm not sure regarding your question about the footprint either way, but I just know that the SB 1383 does require them to go into the compostable green organics, so yeah.
But then it's considered contamination by some of the, by the agriculture industry that buys it. And
exactly the same as the trash haulers. Some accept, and some don't accept. But again, with the SB 54, they will have to accept those materials.
Right. So do we know when those hauling agreements are going to expire? So like there was the one that doesn't accept any of these.
Commissioner Pinkerton asked the same question. I don't know. I'll find out.
I think it's maybe in 7 years. I thought they were 10-year contracts, but I'm not sure. Oh, I just have one comment on the slide you had up previously. Yes, okay, so in your second paragraph there, I would probably call that single-use food service ware, because when you're putting the word disposable and recycling together in one sentence, which are kind of contradictory, so I would just call it single-use disposable. The last sentence in the second paragraph. So when you call it disposable, but then you're saying it has to meet recycling standards, so it's a recyclable product. So I just don't want to get, single use probably could be substituted for disposable there, unless anybody thinks that's confusing. Thanks.
So I think for the sake of time, I want to try and move us through this. Can we maybe go back to the beginning and just kind of talk through, not necessarily the beginning of the slide deck, but just the ordinance language. So it sounds like for this one, we've discussed having kind of a phase-in date for moving to full compostable. That was for the dine-in. Okay, excuse me. So for this, I guess I would ask the commission, does this language look good for this slide?
Well, I think the date's a little soon, considering we have waste haulers that, if they accept it, then someone else has to go through the effort of removing it down the road, or, it's creating a problem for the waste people. And I think we need to fix that so that they can, we haven't paved the way for them to comply with this yet. It seems like, until we iron it out, it seems like we're...
I don't know that it actually is a new problem, because items typically under 3 inches don't get recycled anyway and never gotten recycled, so this stuff would not have gotten processed anyway. So I don't think it's creating a problem.
I'm just afraid that if we don't phase this in, like if we don't do the July 1, 2025, people are going to be shocked by the next date. So you almost want to phase it in a little bit at a time, I need to get rid of the stock that I have of the straws or whatever, and then stop buying the non-recyclable product, and then
well, maybe
phase
if
it
there's
in.
like like we did with leaf blowers, there's the prohibition date, but then there's the enforcement date that's generous, while we're sorting some of this out, because I just feel like the infrastructure isn't quite there to take advantage of, people are going out of the way to comply with this, and then we're not able to do things, on our end to make sure these are not ending up in landfills. anyway.
So you'd want an effective date of July 1, 2025, but an enforcement date of,
I don't know.
Have we even discussed in this, is there even enforcement language in here at all?
oh no,
In
just,
terms of penalties
just
or?
if it gets passed and
Yeah,
adopted,
okay.
and as these different items, so as this takes effect of January 2021, it'll just be part of our normal enforcement code or process.
Immediately,
So
okay, it would
there'd be a
immediately
letter
be
of-
part of it, okay.
And the letter, then the fines.
Do you have a, go ahead,
Can I just
Alex.
ask you just a clarifying question? So the whole dine-in thing kind of threw me off, and it's been murky ever since that topic came up. So we're talking about two different ordinances, right? And this particular discussion is an ordinance that will affect all food providers, right?
Right.
Versus what we'll talk about next, right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So in that case,
But it'll be one ordinance.
okay, sure. So this is, yeah, part one. Let's put it that way. Okay, thank you. So I think for part one, this is pretty straightforward to me. I've seen bamboo, sugarcane utensils for a very long time. So I don't think that there are restaurants or providers that have a supply of excess of 6, 9, 12 months of inventory. So I don't know that this kind of applies in the same way that the leaf blower ban does. That's like a very different dynamic for a business. So I think I would go ahead and just proactively say that I would support this prohibition date and also have it be the enforcement date, and just be cut and dry on this one, and the next one I have a lot more to say and think through. That's my stance.
Well, since this is mostly limited to straws and things, I wasn't thinking of that part of it when I was mentioning the phase in, but I don't know what the date is on the other phase of it, so I guess we can talk about that when we get there, but.
So it sounds like the language on this slide is good.
Okay.
We're okay with that. All right, so what is next?
But I would add the enforcement date to mirror, because
So as
council's
it's,
going to be talking about this, so let's express ourselves and say, do we want it to be in line with the effective date, or do we want it to be later?
Let's ask our city attorney, because technically, the effective date would be the enforcement date, correct? So,
Well, how did we do the
Maybe-
leaf blower ban then?
We made it express within the ordinance. Here, the 8.42075 of the draft ordinance are violations and penalties. They go into effect when the ordinance becomes effective.
so we can,
So what I expressed is what would
It's the
happen.
way it's drafted right now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
unless we explicitly made a separate date for the
Got it.
enforcement,
So then
Done that
which
before,
we've done.
so. yeah.
But in this case, it sounds like we're good with leaving this alone.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next? So this would be the foodware,
So this would be the recycling and compostable containers.
right,
So
beginning
our
January 1st.
recommendation
Yeah.
is that this take effect January 1, 2026 for that mirrors Burbank. And we think it gives food and beverage providers time. And as we've just had the discussion today, getting closer to SB 54 and more compliant products will be out. We just feel that extended timeline is beneficial.
I would just drop the word disposable again. I think it conflicts with following compostable, recyclable, but
Okay.
defer to the city attorney on that if it needed.
And this is the one that we're talking about, the table service restaurants, right?
That's the next one.
Or is
No.
that the next one? Okay.
Just
I know, it's all confusing.
for to go. This is for to go.
Well,
Okay,
maybe
to go.
we want to
Okay,
use the
okay.
word,
To go. okay.
insert the words to go or
Yeah,
delivery.
say take,
just
it
to-
should, yeah, we need to disambiguate clearly, but, okay. No, takeout food or
Yeah.
beverage facility. Takeout / delivery, whatever, but.
So want to remove the word disposable. And you said use what instead?
Well, typically I would say single use, but if they're, you know,
Yeah.
recyclable can be more than one use, but if you maybe just put to-go/delivery
Okay,
in lieu of disposable, I think that tackles both.
okay.
I have a question in regards of the separate incentives for both parts, because I know one of them focuses more on providing the reusable things the businesses needs, as well as the dishwashers, and then the other part is for these compostable and recyclable things. Would addressing the different kind of businesses, because we mentioned before that Glendale Galleria, most of those businesses are franchises, and they focus more on, well, they're not going to have as much reusable things in the first place. They're going to mainly have compost. So how specific are you going to categorize the different restaurants when serving them and getting the information from them? Because that's going to affect a lot of the ways you categorize the incentives and just which restaurant you prioritize for which incentive.
Right, so that's a great question. So it would be, here is the $50,000 allotment, be 500 for each restaurant, for example. So it'd be on a first come, first served basis. Who came to the city and applied for that $500 grant is how we distribute those funds.
Okay, thank you.
But unless you suggestions of we should do it other ways, we'll be happy to look at those.
Sure. Yeah, because again, with the comment about Glendale, I feel like, again, they're more focused on revenue space. I don't think they're going to use dishwashers as often unless it's for like the things they actually use within cooking. And for example, mom and pops, they may have already more reusable things and they might need to focus more on the compostable delivery products as well, because they already have restaurant supplies and etc.
David, for this slide, the food and beverage facility, is that like a technical language, legal language? I mean, can that be construed to mean like a, soda facility that's Coca-Cola, making Coke? I mean, can we narrow that language to be a little more specific, or is it good to be broad in this way? Yeah, I suppose that there's likely language in
So
there.
food or beverage facility means a physical location in the city where a food or beverage provider sells or otherwise provides prepared food or beverages for consumption on or off its premises, and includes but is not limited to a shop, sales outlet, restaurant, bar, pub, coffee shop, coffee stand, juice and or smoothie bar, cafeteria, caterer, convenience store, liquor store, grocery store, supermarket, delicatessen, farmers market, theatre, mobile food truck, roadside kiosks, carts, or a vendor, or any organization or group or individual that regularly provides prepared foods or beverages as part of its service.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you reading that. Yes. Next time I'll read the language ahead of time. Okay, so it sounds like we're good on this. Any other feedback? All right.
So what did we decide? Because we're narrowing it down from that list, right? So
Well, that's the definition in
it's
the
the takeout,
ordinance.
right? But
We were inserting to-go/delivery.
okay,
So it
so
would
that
read
goes later.
effective-
No,
We're not going to.
none of them can.
Facility.
No, but we're getting rid of disposable and substituting to-go/delivery.
That's right. Sorry
Okay, so
about
may
that.
distribute or to go / takeout or delivery or something.
Food service ware that is not
Service
compostable,
ware,
recyclable
okay.
to customers.
So the language Jennifer.
Okay, so that
proposed.
description moved from the facility itself to what they're distributing. Okay.
So
Makes
I think the
sense.
definition David just read is in the ordinance
Correct.
as a definition. So we don't need to have that.
Correct.
And this again is the exact language from the ordinance, or are we just?
No, that is.
This is, okay. Great. So, all right, I think we can go to the next one. Awesome. All right, so now we're talking about the on-premises, very clear. And this again is full, it's considered full service, so you sit down, you're not coming in, getting the food, and then going to sit. It's you are being served.
So our current recommendation is to follow what LA County's done, and that's what they've done.
That's what they've done.
If the commission has a different recommendation they want us to follow, we'll absolutely look at that.
Okay.
So I'm this whole time I've been thinking through like examples of businesses that this would apply to, and of those, which are using single-use foodware. Can you think of one? Like I'm thinking of the applicability and effectiveness of the way that this is written.
Like a food park would, I guess, have disposable.
I think
Court?
Oh, like a food
Yeah,
hall?
food court thing, yeah.
I think of cafes a lot where it's half and half of packaged and being able to be provided
But
food
if-
in plates.
But those aren't sit down. You're not served at your table. You're at a counter ordering food, and that you either go up to the counter to get your food, or somebody's bringing the food to you. And would that apply in this case? Like
Sizzler.
Portos. Portos, I think they bring the food to your table, but you order at a counter. And a lot of businesses are using that model these days. So where does that fall in?
Yeah, that's tough. A lot of restaurants that are already using, that already have waiters are doing reusables. Yeah. I know Burbank did write their law to include all fast casual. So if you are sitting on premises, you have to use reusables, period. Even if you order it at the counter and bring it to the table. Somebody brought up, what do you consider dine-in earlier? If you have a table here or a table there, that is something interesting we're coming across that I don't think was really accounted for earlier. A donut shop that has 2 picnic tables out front, is that considered dine-in? Almost considering, Mario's Italian Deli, great place. They have 2 small tables inside. It's not a restaurant, and yet people sit there and eat. So this is the nuance of all of these things that I guess could be considered in the future for waivers or who knows what. But the way Burbank wrote theirs was to include, if you are dining on premises, that is considered on-site dining and that it's reusable.
And that would be a case where you are asked and you say, yes, I am eating on site, and that would apply. But if it's at Mario's, I mean, are they asking you there?
Absolutely. Oh, well, what a good question. I asked them. I saw the two tables, and I said, "Do people dine here?"
Yeah.
And you have. Okay. Oh my gosh, you're the person. This is great. And they said, yes. Occasionally, people will sit there and dine in. I don't know if they are asking. That is a really specific example I brought up, like very specific. But that is the nuance that exists within all of these. But I'm thinking of, say, a Takaya or a veggie grill. You order and then you sit down. Sometimes, or even there's a place called Pollo Campero. You order and then pick up your food at the counter, but it is all on reusables.
Jennifer, you mentioned.
I was going to say, the reason I recommend in LA that if you dine in, it's reusables, just because so much food now is purchased from fast food places. It's such a big volume-wise, it's a huge source, so I didn't want them excluded, because then we'd still have that huge stream of disposable foodware coming out. So.
I think it would be helpful to say indoor dining, just because there are, especially with the pandemic, more and more tables went outside, and some of these, taqueria type places, they don't have indoor dining, but they've got, for people's convenience, some outdoor tables, and no one comes out and cleans up after you or anything like that, and those reusables would just sit there and probably get stolen or something, I don't know, or end up in the trash anyway or something. So it seems like it should define on premises just a little bit better, because that's a little bit vague. But
I think indoor-outdoor is a really tough divide. I would just keep premises, because it is all-encompassing.
They have a patio.
Well, indoor is conditioned space, basically. The building code would consider it, so like indoor.
But are you saying that's better than saying just the premises? Is premises not specific enough?
No, like, yeah, premises is about as vague as you can get. It's a place, but I'm just thinking of, there's so many mom and pops hanging by a thread. I mean, a couple went out of business in the 6 months between the two surveys, so this is, serious. And then we're going to throw more things at them. Some of them are just going to be like, some of them are even closing because their kids don't even want to take over the business. It's such a hassle. That's why the place down the
service
street on Glen Oaks did. And what?
How about we define it as full service sit-down restaurants? Because full service means there's a waiter. Somebody comes and picks up after yourself. You don't have to take your food and put it in.
With wait staff or something.
Or waited.
Yeah.
So we could limit it to that, but then it sounds like Burbank has gone further. And I'm curious, how have the restaurants there responded to this? I know they have a long lead time, but are they installing dishwashers? I mean, is it happening?
Yeah, well, the ordinance just passed and went into effect in March, and we just started outreach about 5 weeks ago. So no one has made any major changes so far as I can see. And the only regulation that is already effective is the polystyrene. So that's what we're seeing go away. So I haven't seen anything major yet. They do have this long lead time, but there is always an emphasis on the waiver process. For if this is truly undue hardship, if you have space constraints, you could include amount of tables in there as well. Mm-hmm. If you're a restaurant that serves food and has 3 tables, then
or more, yeah.
3 or under, 4 or under, something like that. Maybe that, like Mario's, wouldn't be considered dine-in when a random amount of people per day come. They don't have a consistent dining inside kind of crowd.
So yeah, I think that would be an approach I would maybe support is trying to kind of be a little more kind of far-reaching with this, and then set up a waiver process for businesses. What do you all think?
I mean, waivers are a hassle. If we can just define it a little bit better so people know, that they comply or not, that would save a lot of mom and pops that may be like freaking out because not everyone's comfortable fighting the city over something and so on. But if there was I think something like 4 more tables, 5 or more tables, something like that. I mean, we do that with apartment buildings. If it's 5 units or more, it's way different than 4 or less. So there's a precedent. But and then for also like there's such a labor shortage, and with all the their mom and pops are competing with people that now get $20 an hour to wash the dishes, collect the plates from outside. They're just really struggling to make do with a lot of them have switched to kiosks even. Has anyone tried to use one of those? They're awful. So, they're already very short-staffed, and I, from a sanitation standpoint, I wouldn't want the person preparing my food to be the one who just collected a bunch of people's dirty plates, from the table and probably didn't wash their hands, in between. So, so people will be having to perform more duties. They wouldn't hire a dedicated plate clear dishwasher person in the slow time of day. I mean, I know I'm a germaphobe, so I'm just like,
Do local restaurants report their revenues? Because I know county looks at square footage, and the risk of the food served, but do restaurants report the revenues to the city? Because, no, okay.
I'm aware
They
of.
file taxes, but it's a cash business, so,
So for clarification,
what they say they make, and
can you
who knows.
tell us what Burbank have said again, just for clarification, so
Yes.
we can compare what we're thinking to what they do?
Absolutely. For a dine-in, it is any food consumed on the premises that is considered dine-in. And then as far as the small amount of tables, that is just something we've encountered as we're doing outreach post the regs being written. That kind of is we're just kind of seeing this in action.
So I'd like to make a suggestion, and obviously to talk about it, but I think, as I understand it, the way it's written, the dine-in experience has to include a waiter and somebody has to come to your table in order for this to apply.
Not for Burbank.
No.
Just the county.
This ordinance, what we're considering here today. So in my view, that severely limits the number of applicable businesses to a degree, in my opinion, that makes this whole effort and all this work that we've all put into to be nothing. So I would like to follow the Burbank model so that it encompasses like the high volume, high revenue, like big impact businesses that we can all, examples that we all know and can think of that are here in Glendale. I don't want to name names and then be on somebody's newsletter again. So, so I'd go with that and then come up with some kind of exception. Like the food hall thing I think is interesting. There's places like the Great White Hut, smaller places that I think we should kind of like tease out. Now, whether it's like number of staff or number of tables, there's something at the bottom there that I think we should have some sensitivity to and try to figure out.
But the exemption can't be just hardship, because it's hard for everybody. Change is hard.
Right.
Physical limitation, like the White Hut, good luck putting a dishwasher. What are they going to put? Add another building behind them?
Exactly.
So that I understand. It has to be case by case. Hardship alone is not enough. There has to be some physical limitation why you can't comply with this.
Can we go, we had a slide on hardships, right?
It is in the ordinance, and in fact, it is linked to space limitations. So that is in the draft ordinance. With the exemption is 842065. Compliance with this article will result in an undue hardship because the food or beverage facilities lack of space. So that would be a White Hut scenario, for example, or in the Galleria, where they didn't make provisions for that requirement or that potential need. So it would result in undue financial hardship. So the concept there, of course, was we're taking a look at mom and pops that may not have the capability, or they are operating on that shoestring budget to stay above board. No suitable products are available. Well, that would be a case-by-case scenario, depending on what type of service that particular food and beverage provider has. And then the last one is deprive a person of a legally protected right. That would be, of course, disability accommodations. And we do define somewhere, I'm not seeing it up here, it's probably undue hardship includes, but is not limited to. So we give ourselves some flexibility to work with individuals. All these spaces are a little bit different. And that is the city manager or designee to provide additional information. So they would apply for it, and if additional information or investigation is necessary, that can be undertaken so that it's fair, fairly applied and equitably applied, and those constraints are considered in the exemption application.
I also think this is really, really important to specify, because I agree that if we go with Burbank's rule, that makes it it makes the ordinance have the impact that we hope to reach. I believe someone mentioned before that fast food is a big thing, and that's going to already result in so much of the waste, so much of the compostable waste we see in the environment. So taking whatever opportunity we can with the businesses that can potentially be turning to the reusable things is really crucial. And so be it if we have to like focus on the exceptions. And I think that has a lot to do with the surveys. If there's specific places we have to discuss and really assess more, then there's going to take more time with that. But I agree in the case.
Okay. So Nora, can we go back to the slide? Okay, so it sounds like, I don't think we have consensus yet, but it sounds like the idea is to maybe try and model this language after what Burbank's doing. Have it be on-premise dining, and it would be not, sorry, I'm just lost in the language here, but it would require reusables exclusively for on-premise, right? With those exemptions that we just discussed.
Well, I'd still like to see the, 5 tables or more kind of thing, just to let, people.
If it's a weird scenario where it's for example, the deli that Rebecca mentioned, they can apply for exemption and say, technically we're not a sit down. We just have for convenience a couple of tables if people want to sit and buy chips and sandwich. But I'm wondering whether, the greatest hardship is going to be for the smaller businesses, whether we should build in additional time for the 26 and over employees and 26 and under employees. Phase it in, give the smaller businesses another 6 months beyond this to comply. Because again, if you're a large, business, restaurant, BJ's, they're already capable. It's the smaller businesses that are going to be hurt the most. My recommendation is to give them at least 6 months. July 1st, large businesses, 26 or more. 6 months later, January, and then July, it'll kick in for everybody.
I guess the hardship piece would kind of cover that, because the city manager or whoever.
The hardship would be permanent. I don't have the physical space to add a dishwasher, and I'm asking for a permanent exemption. The White Hut is not going to change. They're not going to go underground or.
It's the way it's written is not permanent. It's a 1 year. It's a 1 year exemption, I guess you would call it, and then it can be renewed. So
It is. It could be with or without conditions. So if one of those conditions could be something along the lines of their capability or the investigation, or require them to look into the possibility, and of course we could work with them, right?
Let's use the White Hut. I'm pretty sure, and on an annual basis, they're going to come back and say, nothing has changed. I can't build behind me. I can't go underground. I need to renew my exemption.
Right.
So that sticks. But if they don't have the physical limitations, they don't qualify for an exemption. What I'm saying is the smaller businesses, maybe 26 and under is too big, and let's discuss and say 10 and under, whatever it is, or 15 and under. But let's give the smaller businesses additional time to phase in. Their neighbor did it. They'll go ask, how did you do it? The smaller businesses, the privately owned mom and pop businesses are the ones that are going to be hardest.
A lot of these mom and pops, they don't necessarily speak English at home, and if this is something they're going to have to do every year, I could see them just saying, Glendale's too difficult to do business in. So
Well, here's a thought on that. Like when I first got my alarm system at home, I think if after a couple of years I didn't have any false alarms, I didn't have to keep renewing the permit. So maybe you could do something if after the first year, if nothing substantially changed, you don't have to reapply. I mean, that's trusting it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but that's left up to the city manager to say, nuances. You come back, if you have a good record, come back every 3 years, or you don't need to come back at all, whatever it is. But for us, the big picture is, the large businesses kick in January 1, and we're using the Burbank model. And the only addition that I would give is that smaller businesses, and that threshold, is it 26 and under, 15 and under? We can talk about that and say, give them an extra 6 months to comply.
I think originally...
Is that a standard number, the 26?
So 26 is what we take from LA County again. I think originally you said that all businesses would have to comply by January 1, 2028. So we can bring that back again. So if you want large businesses to comply by January 1, 2026, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, My suggestion is to leave this date as is and use the Burbank definition of what constitutes a sit-down restaurant, or an on-premises dining. My own suggestion is to give the smaller businesses, 26 and under, additional runway to comply with this, with the reusable materials.
And sorry to interrupt, what I have on the bottom is what Burbank uses on their website as the verbiage, just as a visual for everyone here. Let me make that bigger.
So they didn't have two phases, they just, okay. I do like the idea of phased in though for the smaller guys.
I'm just like, if we're dividing it between under 26 and over 26, again, I'm curious of like, there are so many businesses under 26 that are, I would not think that a business that has 25 staff is considered small. But I imagine that it's a sizable enough business that has a kitchen, that has dishwashing equipment, et cetera. So I get the like intent of what you're saying, but I don't know if I would like draw it. I don't know that I would draw it there at under and over 26.
About
that
square
seems
footage.
Square
That's what the county does. That's where that number came from. But
Right.
Is there a legal
there's
reason
shifts,
why
so
county
it's not like
said
26 people are there at
Right,
once,
right.
But
But you're suggesting a 6-month lag?
Yeah. And if 26 does not work and it's too high, let's bring it down to 15 and under.
No, Rondi brings up a good point. She just said not all of them are working at the same time. There's different shifts. So
I've worked at a cafe.
That doesn't-
I get it.
That doesn't matter with the definition of 26 or more, it's just total, it doesn't matter if they're all there at one time.
I'm warming up to your suggestion.
Okay.
And the effective date is 2026. 26 employees. It's easier for folks to remember.
It's a slogan.
You only need to remember 26.
Yeah, it's fine. The most important thing for me is that we redefine what dine-in is, and if we're able to come to a consensus on that, I'm very happy.
Consume on premises is, because premise then could include interior space and if you have a patio, so just.
yeah, I just think about the extra labor. My grandparents had a restaurant, and so I tend to identify with mom and pops because Granny and Grandpa had a restaurant, and yeah, they're always watching every cent. I don't know if any of you guys watched that show, The Bear. And, there was that slogan, like, time is money or something. And it was like every second counts, actually. And that's a lot of seconds we're adding for people to do to go out. Especially, I'm thinking of the taqueria on Glendale Boulevard. It's like there's a few tables outside. It's covered. Does that count? And for someone to have to walk, all the way around and go over there and bus things when there's like people waiting in line, and I think that the tables are going to be dirty all the time with reusable plates just sitting there with flies on them. So I'm just like thinking of this like horrible scenario, and I just feel like there should be, in addition to the 26 or more, there should be table, if they have 5 or more tables, then that counts. Otherwise, or some threshold, 8 tables, whatever, but just putting some numeric value so they're really tiny places that mostly are probably just doing takeout type food anyway.
Someone would have to go to every single restaurant, count tables though, and like I said, they could pull tables out. And
Are you saying those restaurants would not already they wouldn't qualify for the exemptions that we're offering? That have a small number of a small
Getting an
number of
exemption
tables?
is a hassle. It's a huge hassle, and you got to go back annually and do it. That's a hassle. That's a huge, like, time is money. Every second counts. Like, you're going to spend a half a day at the city and all this, and your English isn't great, and you're reading these legal documents. I mean, I've had like some of my Armenian friends have asked me to help them fight the city for something because they're crying because they don't understand this letter that they've gotten, and they're about to lose their property.
But if you own a restaurant, you have to comply with LA County Health Department regulations, so you're able to read that and comply with that. You have to apply for business license. So you have to apply for taxes. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're doing that require some knowledge of English and running a business anyways. I mean, it's up to the city manager to simplify maybe the exemption application or offer it in multi-languages, whatever it is. But for us, we're setting the parameters here, not the actual how do you manage the exemption. We'll leave that up to the city staff and say, in our experience, this is how we do it. We offer it in 4 different languages, whatever it is. They mostly
Well, like
use.
Rebecca was saying, the number of tables kept coming up, so maybe that's a lesson learned that we could learn from and just put the number of tables in there at the outset, right?
Yeah, additionally, as we're doing outreach, we have waivers on us. So if we instantly see that this is going to be a problem, like I said, the same things keep popping up over and over, we give them the waiver form, they have it, and then there's also a QR code on the back that of the outreach packet that links them to where they need to go as well.
If you put a threshold and say 8 tables or more, what they're going to do is
Take out
put
Take
in-
out-
tables will be portable tables. All of a sudden, during rush hour, they open up and they use those tables and then wipe it down and put it in the back. That you're almost asking for them to find ways around it.
What, you have the waiver itself, like the waiver application. Is
We
it
do.
simple? Is it?
It's very simple. Have it in my car. I wish I had it on me. It is very simple, yet specific, if that makes sense. You're basically saying, so far it's been compliant product not available because we already know a certain amount of things aren't going to be available. And then they have to just kind of fill out what the product is that they are using and cannot find a compliant equivalent to. So far that's all I've come across. But the waiver form is just one sheet, fairly simple. And then city staff reviews it. To me, it seems kind of similar to the SB 1383 waiver that certain businesses don't have to have the green bin if they don't make enough green waste. It seems very similar to that.
Is there a fee?
No. Oh, fee for, I'm sorry.
Well, for asking for a exemption, but.
No.
Can I ask 2 quick clarifying questions? Does this include? I'm not sure what the new state ban on plastic bags applies to food businesses, restaurants. Are they allowed to use plastic bags for takeout?
As I read the law, it only applies to grocery stores, supermarkets, markets, delis, liquor stores, not to restaurants.
Can we include that in this ordinance? That plastic bags are not allowed?
I think the state law is the foundation. Like LA, we expanded the single-use plastic bag ban to restaurants, but we did it before the state adopted their bag law, the most recent iteration of it. So
It raises a preemption question is what it does. So we'd have to take a look at that. Yeah, whether we could regulate, I mean, if they're occupying the field of that regulation, how extensive it is. So I'd want to take a look at that regulation to see if we could go a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, in the most basic sense, if the state ban is for plastic bags at grocery stores, I mean, that has nothing to do with a ban on other business types, unless the state law says we're banning this category and you cannot ban any other category.
Argument, yeah, we could take a look at it.
So can we proactively throw that in as that being our recommendation if we agree to it?
You could.
And then have staff.
If law has no objection, then yeah, why not?
We would vet it, yeah.
It would just be a plastic bag prohibition for takeout as it relates to this category of business. And then I had one more quick clarifying one. Oh, so with the businesses that would ask for the waiver or the exemption, do they then revert to the category where it has to be at least recyclable. How does that work?
I don't believe we've specified that, but we could consider specifying that, yeah.
So like if they, let's just real quick, if they applied for the exemption and they received it, what is the worst possible product that they can provide to a customer?
The thing that we've seen over and over is that there are just these certain handful of 4 or 5 products that there are no good compostable or recyclable options for. And the coffee cup is the big one. Because if it's recyclable, it's going to melt. It's and if it's compostable, well, they still have a plastic lining inside. So to me, they're usually looking for a waiver because no product exists either compostable or recyclable for that one specific. It's always hot sauces, beverages, liquids, gravies, things like that, soups.
So maybe an option for that would be to just limit it to compostable products. And then taking into consideration that there would still be businesses, wanting a waiver because of the product not being available. But we would eliminate the option for them to use recyclable and just allow them to use compostable.
But there really is no recyclable or compostable coffee,
In those
hot beverage
cases,
cup,
in
right?
those
So,
cases.
yeah.
But they wouldn't be able to use plastic otherwise. Would that work? Okay.
I think I follow you, but I trust you, Cole.
Makes sense?
I think you know what I'm getting at, so
Well, for some,
Yeah.
and some rules, I deal with this on a daily basis myself, but there's some rules like the Buy American Act has built into it if the domestic product is more than 20% in cost more than the non-domestic product, that's an exemption. So that's another opportunity because we don't know we assume one of these days they're going to come up with something to replace this liner that is compostable. What if it's 10 times the price of the other ones? Then what do we do? So right now they're getting an exemption because it's just not on the market. But then, okay, maybe it's made out of glass and they're $5 each or something instead of
the exemption is so vague that anybody can apply. If we need to revisit the language, I was looking at it while it was on the slide or in the document. It's very vague. It can be a financial hardship. Yeah. So you can look at those 4 points, but it also says, but not limited to. So it really is at the discretion of staff to grant this exemption.
Yeah.
But you're right, it also allows the flexibility where if over time a product comes into the market that is affordable and comparable, my hope is that staff uses that discretion to say, you know what, this product is now replaceable by a like product and there's no difference to you as a business.
And I think it will. If there's a market for a product, manufacturers in the future are going to start offering more choices.
Yeah, and that's like, as a policy decision, like because this exemption specifically is so vague and because it is so accessible to the business owner, that is why I'm reaching far and having it be as applicable as possible. So yes, they will have to go through a hoop of filling out a form that is
Every
free
year.
to them.
every year.
Yes. I'm sorry, but that's much easier than, I guess, paying more for the thing that we're asking them to do. So, yeah, if it takes a minute to fill out a form, then so be it. But yeah, because it's so vague and it's so applicable, I would like to achieve the intent of why we're here, which is to reduce waste, reduce plastic, address the climate issue. And let's do that as expansively as possible.
So back to if you don't mind, Nora. So on this one, we've worked on the language. Yeah, go ahead, David.
What I've heard is effective January 1, 2026, prepared food and beverages over 26 or 25 plus employees would be required to comply with the regulations Those businesses, 1st, 2026.
Well, you have to be specific on the 25.
Yeah, I should say 26 or more.
26 or more, okay, yeah. So 26 and up,
Where are we?
and then 25 and under.
No,
No, so the first sentence,
Laura, sorry.
Just give us.
26
The
or more,
exact.
there we go.
July 1st, 2026. And for this one, we are utilizing the Burbank definition that is any food consumed on premise. This would apply to.
Well, the first sentence isn't right. We should do it in order. So effective January 1st, 2026, prepared or food or beverages or prepared by food establishments, whatever, employing 26 or more employees. There's just some language missing in there. Prepared by food or for.
Yeah,
We don't have
it
the
might not be as
premises.
helpful.
We can take it and draft
Let's
it.
do it.
Yeah.
Let's just make sure David has it
Be here
right.
till midnight.
Yeah.
We don't want to confuse people either watching. So, David, if you can, thank you though, Nora, thank you.
And then to your point, to
Yeah, so the point, I'll reiterate that. So if we allow an exemption, if we allow a business to be exempted from this, we will not allow them to serve compostables and plastic. They will only be able to serve compostables.
As long as the product is available.
Does that make sense? So they can, yes,
in compostable,
in compostable,
food serviceware,
right,
unless the product is unavailable.
correct.
Okay. Did you write that?
Does the rest of the commission understand that?
Yes.
That if they ask for a waiver,
Yes.
to get a waiver for reusables,
It goes to compostable.
then they can kind of revert back to,
Compostables only.
Compostables, not compostables or recyclables.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, if we could just read it back, since there was so much back and forth. If we're done, I don't know. I'd like to know what I'm voting on, so.
At some point.
And then there was the point of the plastic bag.
And she was gonna check whether it's doable.
So we can come back to the next meeting with the plastic bag language. We can come back to the next commission meeting with the plastic bag language.
How's the timing? Is this going to council sooner than?
We haven't had a date
hasn't?
yet
Okay.
certain for council. We just wanted to get this right through this commission, then we'll go to council.
Got it. I don't know that it needs to come back. I would just say that, like, if the state law allows for it, let's just move forward with that.
So that would be
We
to
have
go.
consensus from the commission on that point, right? Okay.
The idea being, again, that any to go, even if you're at the restaurant, get your food to go, or if you go in, sit down and get it to go, it has to be, and you get it in a bag, it has to be, it can't be a paper, or excuse me, it can't be a plastic bag.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, since it's, David, since it's not agendized on, for council yet, if, by next meeting, the language is available, we can, wordsmith it in the next few weeks, and we can read it during the next, commission meeting.
We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they give some time to finish wordsmithing and all that, and.
Yeah,
We can
but
provide a
that
red
word-
line to the ordinance, the draft that you see right now that addresses all of the issues that are being covered today.
So we're technically tabling the motion?
Yes.
How does it work, like, agenda-wise?
we could take the direction and then come back based on, based on the discussion this evening and table the
Hopefully,
motion.
next meeting, it'll be a quick vote because it's all ironed out by then.
Yes.
I suppose that, yeah, if that's what everyone wants, is it to come back clean. Okay, well, we have a couple more slides here, so I think do we not? I think we're almost there, right? Or is that it? Oh, the incentives that we need to discuss, right? So this is the language as well?
No, this is
summary.
this is
Yeah.
not language in the ordinance. This is just our recommendation of how we think the incentive programs should be developed. So this one, again, is most of this money would go to reusable. So 80% of this 50,000 would be 80% of this 50,000 would be for those applying to use the money to purchase reusable items, and the 20% would be to purchase compliant, compostable, or recyclable items. So again, pushing people more towards the reusables
Okay.
is the purpose of that.
And where did the number come from? Can you give us an
So that was doing research with other jurisdictions and how much they had offered for similar incentive programs. So that was based on $500. So that gives, I think, 133 restaurants or something,
Okay.
something like that. So
50 divided by 500, we're only helping 100 businesses.
100 businesses.
Okay.
I personally think that number is low.
Okay.
The 50,000 should be more. I mean, the report that Rebecca said, it's over 800 businesses in Glendale. So, by helping 100, we're not even, not even 50%. So I think that number should be double.
So do you want to do 50,000 per year? So
Yeah,
because we can't keep doing it, it'll just be for
correct, for at least a couple of years, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we can make that change.
Any other comments on this one?
Is there like yeah,
Yeah,
well,
$500.
I'm thinking about like is this money accessible to the largest of the largest businesses? Oh, it's not? Where is that stipulated?
That's actually not on this slide, but it would be again for that 26 and under category.
This is limited to
yeah,
that?
so both these incentive
Oh,
programs
great,
would
sorry.
be limited to.
I didn't catch
make
that.
that clear. That was my bad.
Okay.
But it would be.
And does
Perfect.
this also apply to banquet halls? We have quite a few banquet halls in Glendale,
If
so
they meet
that
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 threshold.
would be considered a dining establishment in the same definition, okay?
Do these two incentives only apply for the 26 and under, or will the larger businesses also?
No,
How-
just for the 26.
Okay.
So this would just be for the small businesses.
Okay, and then there was one other one for something different.
Yeah, so the second one
It's
would
just number
be
2 there, that's right.
regarding capital improvement. So the small, again, 26 and under, if they don't have appropriate plumbing or something, we would assist them, give them incentive towards that, or the incentive towards a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
We recommend, I would assume based on previous comments, you want to do 100,000 per year for this, because it's expensive to potentially.
Could the incentives in the previous slide be used for that as well? What's the intent of those again? Sorry, if we can go back.
So I
The
think it was
$500
just-
is more for, it's
Yeah, 'cause
for
you
the
may have a small
reusables, that's
business
right.
that
Okay.
already has a dishwasher or something like that. So, I mean, we could combine.
No.
They
No,
can stack
thank
it.
you.
They can apply
They could
for
stack
both.
it, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing to say they
Yeah.
can't.
Okay, are we, going back, Nora, are we okay with this 100,000? It would be
yeah.
the same thing, it would be 100,000 a year?
Yeah, that's what I
Correct,
think the
for 2 years.
recommendation.
That's my recommendation.
Okay. So all told, this would be about $300,000.
That's what we would ask
Would be-
city council for that appropriation.
Okay.
If
What's a commercial dishwasher go for these days?
they range up to $3,000.
Okay.
It depends whether you have the hood one
Right,
or whether you
right.
have the one where. I think the medium I think was 1,500.
Okay.
So. But so you get $750 from this program. SoCal Gas, you can get $750. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it, right?
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thanks, Rebecca, again, for all your input and work on this.
So when you're visiting these restaurant owners, are you marketing it like, oh, this is an opportunity to save money by not having so much, like, I mean, you read something, theoretically, you're saving money, then if you're constantly buying, they would look at how much they spend, a month on disposables and maybe look at it as an opportunity to save money and the environment.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes that gets lost in this because it's so, the recyclables and the compostables are so complex, and the disposal and the hauling and the purchasing. But really, when you just think of this as a reusable law, it is not only the most effective choice for the environment, but financially, in the long run, return on investment for the restaurants as well. And we really do focus on that because restaurants that feel especially stunned by the information that they have to switch from 100% disposable to reusables, we really do make the case that yes, seems overwhelming, but you have a long lead time. And after you purchase this, we have case study after case study that can show you that including the labor, the water, the electricity, you will get a return on investment that only increases every year you use those reusables. So we really try to hit that home, that this is not something that is going to hurt their bottom line. It is actually going to help it.
And I just want to add a little bit more of a local context to that economic piece, because we have our landfill here in Glendale that is soon going to be closed. And so the economic impact of waste that we haven't even touched on today, the cost of that is going to go up here in Glendale specifically. So having our local businesses understand that piece of it as well, that the less waste you create, the less you'll be paying to haul that waste, I think is specific to this community will help with these conversations.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, letting them know that as a homeowner, you can pay less to make less trash. That is something that I think will be very salient to them as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's next?
Item 7, Sustainability Office Updates, Repair Cafe and Clothing Swap Summary. Just really quick, I wanted to show you guys data that we gathered during the last 2 sets of events that we had. So for the clothing swap, that was for September 7. It was at Casa Verdugo Library. 72 people participated. 6.5 pounds of clothes were recycled. 33 pounds donated, and overall 245 pounds were swapped, and that puts our total for 6 events at 1,700 pounds of clothing. For the Repair Cafe, we had 16 volunteer repairers this time. 71 attended. That's the highest attendee numbers for the Repair Cafe. We had 49 participants and 55 completed repairs. We had 16 items that we did not successfully repair, and our total weight of items repaired was 207 pounds. And in total, 71 items were brought in, but again, we were only able to repair 55 of them. And our next event is going to be a mega event. We're combining Clothing Swap and Repair Cafe into a one-day event. This way, we're hoping to get, maximum numbers and maximum efforts combined. The reason we're doing this is because the library's teen space is opening up during the same time. So all librarians are all hands on deck at the library. So they had no other availability, so we had no other choice but to combine both events, which is fine. We'll just be there for longer, and we'll have more attendees that way. Yeah.
So any volunteers?
Please.
Is there a particular skill set for the Repair Cafe that's most in demand?
Yes, tinkerers are always busy. They're the ones who do electronics, so say coffee repair, toaster repair, always in demand. What we lack is bike repairers, gluers from time to time. Yeah, people who glue stuff. And then knife sharpeners. I'm the only knife sharpener. I recently recruited someone else accidentally to come help me. So I think I'm covered for next event too, but bike repair and tinkerers.
Is there a certification as a knife sharpener, or you just show up with your knife sharpener and you're a knife sharpener?
Yeah, so we have a kit the Makerspace bought for me, so I'm using that, and then I trained someone else, so they're also coming and using that kit.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty easy if anyone wants to learn.
Okay.
That's great. Well, thank you. I hope these continue into the years to come as long as they can. It seems like they're gaining more and more popularity, gaining more and more attention from the community. So, yeah, thank you. Are there any other updates? I guess that was it. All right.
Item 8, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.